You are listening to the Knightline Sports Network, brought to you by Travis Dever and the Dever team, 386-690-1636.
Knightline is brought to you by the Dever team, your source for New Smyrna Beach real estate and everything else New Smyrna Beach. Go to www.thedeverteam.com and call UCF alumni Travis Dever for all your New Smyrna Beach needs. 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636.
Welcome to UCF Knightline, your source for UCF sports and former player information.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley coming to you from the 1148 studios, and this is Knightline 243 from the award-winning Knightline Sports Network. Joining me as always,
Roger Phipps, and on this week's show, Heartbreak on the Homefront. Drops by the numbers. Game stats. We provide a hoops preview as we go inside the paint with Knightline's very own 7-footer, Ben Stout. Roger's 5-alarm hot take. Knightros Deep Thought, Inside the Huddle with Kyle Israel, and your questions in Ask Knightline.
Alrighty. Well, sounds good. Well, we didn't quite do what we were all expecting us to do, or maybe we did do what you were expecting us to do in the game last night. Cincinnati 36, UCF 33. Not really what we wanted.
No.
But it is what it is, and it's done, and we move on.
We move on, but we talk a little bit about our wounds, so to speak. Not necessarily the wounds that we inflicted on ourselves, although we had to pretty much play perfect to win this game. I think everybody had that in the back of their minds. That being said, to me, the key to this game was staying ahead in the points to keep Cincinnati from playing their game, which is a time of possession game. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. The offense squandered first half opportunities and allowed Cincy to stay within striking distance, and then they took the lead before the half. So once that happened, we would have had a hard time stopping them from playing the game that they wanted to play. So. Another observation, just that last drive, in my mind, took entirely too long. I mean, this was a game of missed opportunities. There was an interception, an untimely interception. There was that play where we got all the way down to the 19, had to settle for a field goal. We got all the way down to the 30, and we didn't make it on 4th and 1. So just a lot of different things that happened, and what can you say? I mean, there were drops. There were all kinds of things that just kind of conspired against us, and we just didn't play that perfect game.
I can tell you the one thing that I could say about it. The better team won. Period. End of discussion. We don't have to talk anything more.
And that's
the better team won.
And that's the end of the podcast.
That's it. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. No, but really, the mistakes that were made, just the things that you mentioned, it all turned out where the better team won, and they were the better team. I hate to say that Cincinnati is the better team than UCF team, not the better coach, not the better offensive coordinator, not all the people that we should fire, not all the players that we should kick off the team, that they were a better team. It was a football game. Look, people, this was number 7 Cincinnati. Number 7. They have the 7 by their name for a reason. It's not just because somebody wanted to put it there. The guy on TV or the guy in the control room, hey, let's just put a little 7 up there. That's not why.
You mean the same guy that kept saying Golden Knights and driving me nuts?
Yeah, whatever. I didn't watch it on TV. I was there, actually, which was a great experience. But anyway, yeah, they're number 7 for a reason. We came very close to beating the number 7 team. I don't care if they're in our division. I don't care if they're in our conference. They're still the number 7 team. Many teams thought that about us when we beat them by 3 points. Should have been 10 points that they beat us by, but whatever. Luke Fickell's a nice freaking guy, I mean, he could have put that one in. They didn't, and they ran out the clock, and that was a great move by them. But still, we need to keep this in perspective, Knights fans. Just, come on. I've been reading stuff. I've thought about a lot of this, and I thought about a lot of the things that people wrote on the various forums and the various Facebook groups and Twitter and all this stuff. And I really think that Knight Nation has lost their freaking minds over this whole deal. It is what it is. Could you imagine when you're a fan of a team that wins one year, loses the next year, wins one year, loses the next year, wins one year, loses the next year, and then goes 0-12? You
mean the UCF fans?
And then they have 2 years of absolute freaking awesomeness. And then, it turns back into a football team. It turns back into the game of football. This is fairly normal for this to happen with football teams. I mean, I've been a fan of the Kansas City Chiefs for a long time, right? That's my team. And they sucked for 40 years. You know what I'm saying?
I get it.
So, and we could still have George O'Leary as a coach. Honestly.
Well,
we just have to take this as the game of football. Number one, it's 2020. And nothing is the same in 2020 as it's ever been. Everything is different. The rules for going to the stadium, the rules about what you can do in the stadium, the rules that you can't tailgate, the rules that NCAA is giving people their year back. There wasn't going to be any football. 15 games this week were canceled. You know what I'm saying? Everything is weird. We only have 9 games. A bunch of players opted out for UCF. A bunch of players got kicked off of this team as well. Think about that for a second. Think about how, 10 players opted out?
10 players opted out.
And then 4 starters were kicked off of this team less than a month ago.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, less than a month ago. And we still played the number 7 team in the nation, Cincinnati. I don't care if it's a conference team. I don't care who it is. The number 7 team, take the name away. The number 7 team we played to within 3 freaking points.
And honestly, we had plenty of opportunities to take that game.
Yes.
We really did. I mean, if you look at all the different things that had to happen for us to lose.
My point being, though, is it's not that bad. Yes, it's not what we expected for the year, right? It's, of course, not what we expected. But it's not that bad. It's the game of freaking football. We could be Kansas. That's my other team. You know what I'm saying? They haven't won a freaking game this year. They haven't won one game. They have Les Miles as the freaking coach. Les Miles is a pretty good coach.
Yeah, he is.
It could be that. I don't think we've won a conference game in like 3 or 4 years. That's bad. That's my team. That's my home. That's my school. That's my alma mater.
Right.
It could be a lot worse, is what I'm saying. It could be a heck of a lot worse.
Well, and I think, too, one of those things is I think what you're seeing is an emotional reaction. I mean, at the end of the day, anytime something like this happens, especially when there's been a buildup for the past 3 or 4 years of the excellence and the standard that we're setting for ourselves, I think you're seeing an emotional reaction of a letdown, and it's been a combination of letdowns.
But it's all emotions. That's the problem. It's all emotions. Then, I think that there should be a ban on posting anything for like 24 hours.
You mean like my 24-hour ban?
Do you have that? Do you do that to yours?
Yeah.
I do that now to myself, to be honest with you.
After a loss, anytime that there's a loss, 24 hours I won't post anything for that very reason.
Exactly. I've self-imposed that on myself as well, because I've been more than known to post stupid things on the internet when I'm pissed off. And everybody that knows the program and has followed my journey through all this knows that. And I've said stupid stuff here, and I'll probably do it again tonight. But that's all right. Just take a deep breath and step back and look at the situation. Is it perfect? No. Did we still have a very successful season? Yes. Did we get to where we wanted and do the things that we really wanted to do? No. But that's the game of football. And I just want people to realize it's a game. And, there's a lot of people's, besides fans, lives not really lives depending on it. I'm not saying lie. I'm trying to think of the right word to use here. Your well-being and your career and your mortgage payments and, all these things don't depend on that. But coaches, it does. So when all these people that are not involved in football in any way, never have been involved in football anyway, are saying that this coach should be fired and I know more than they do about coaching football and they shouldn't be here and Danny White should fire him, that's total BS. I almost said the other thing.
I saw it.
It's complete freaking BS to say that any coach should be fired because you know not nearly as much as they do. That's all I'm saying about that. I get so sick of it, even going on any of these things to look. And somebody had the gall to say it's Coach Golish's fault because he brought all the tight ends in and why haven't we used them? Coach Golish, his first year here, he's a co-offensive coordinator, but it's his fault. And then somebody blamed DG, Dylan Gabriel, the quarterback that's probably still ranked number 2 in the nation this week.
He's actually, depending on what you're looking at, he's number 1.
Okay, well, there you go. It's his fault. He threw passes that the receivers couldn't catch. Or it's the receivers' fault because they dropped some balls, which is uncharacteristic of this team for the most part, except for the one guy. What's the
Jacob
one?
Harris.
Jacob Harris. He drops everything.
Who, by the way, did not drop any passes this week.
Right. Did he play?
He did.
Okay.
He did,
well,
yeah. He played really well, actually.
Did he? Okay. Did he catch anything?
He did.
I didn't see his name on the stats at all.
He did.
He caught something?
Yes, he did.
He's not in here. It's Williams, Robinson, Nixon, O'Keefe.
No, he definitely did.
Okay, well, they didn't put it in the stats, so whatever. Anyway, it's just a game of football, folks. And these people are paid lots of money because they know more about the game of football than we do. All of them. If you're an actual football coach that really knows more than Coach Heupel does, and I can, there's probably about maybe 50 coaches out there, period, in the nation, college football coaches that might know more than Coach Heupel does about playing football.
Well, there's a reason he's a Division I FBS.
There's also a reason
coach.
that he makes $3 million a year. But these guys in the forums know way more about it than he does. Everybody on Facebook and Twitter knows way more about it than he does.
Well, I think
this makes me mad. It does.
You can hear it.
It's ridiculous. I watch football all the freaking time, but I'm not going to say that I know more than he does, that I could make a better offense than he does. Do you realize how many years it takes for these people to learn their craft and to build that, and how many years it's taken him to learn things from the people that he's learned them from? And he's been around some great minds in football as well. Some of the great minds. The Stoops brothers, both of them. The crazy one he was at Washington, now he's at, where's
Mike
he at?
Leach.
Mike Leach. I couldn't think
He's
of his
in the
name.
SEC now.
Yeah. Those are those three guys are some of the most brilliant minds in all of football, period. And Heupel learned from those guys. Oh boy. Not that I agree with everything that Heupel does, not that I agree with every play that he calls and the way that he calls them, but he doesn't deserve to be fired over this. And we're going to get a lot more into this later because your Ask Knightline questions are basically all about this subject. They're basically all about Heupel. And should we continue to have him, and should we get somebody else? Kyle Israel, when we talk to him, says, who else are we going to get? Right now, who else is there out there? 2020, there's not going to be a lot of coaches fired, by the way. It's just not going to happen. There's going to be a couple, but it's not the same as another year.
The coaching carousel will certainly not be the same, although there's already a few on the market.
Next year, it'll really be like, well, who's on the market?
There were a couple of folks that were fired. I don't know off the top of my head, but there were a couple of folks that were fired.
Number one, again, UCF does not have the money for a buyout after all this. His buyout is $10 million the last time I saw it. It may be something more now. I don't know.
I think it's less than that now because it was a de-escalating, and I think he signed his contract last year or something like that, so it goes down
even
every year.
$8 million. We don't have that.
No, well,
Danny White just sent out a letter, if you saw it, to everybody, and it said they don't have anything, basically.
Well, we took out a bigger line of credit. But
Yeah.
that being said, from a coaching perspective, even beyond that, just I don't see anybody out there available that would allow us to do that. And Coach Heupel, to his credit, I mean, he's a head coach. We knew going into this we were getting a head coach who hadn't been a head coach before. He was a coordinator. And you're seeing him learn on the fly as well. At the end of the day,
Look at Scott Frost out in Nebraska. He's just winging it. I mean, he's awesome. Awesome, right? Coach Frost is awesome in Nebraska. Right?
Not in Nebraska. I think he's better in Florida than he is in Nebraska.
Yeah, but would you rather have that? A lot of people want Coach Frost back. What do you think that he would have done if he didn't have that team that he had? The players that I will remind you, the players that he had in 2017.
He has had only one quote unquote winning season his career.
Exactly. And he had one of the best football teams. How many of those guys are in the NFL? There's a couple. Maybe
There's
not
6.
20, but
I think there's 6.
Right. That's one of the most prolific classes in the NFL that UCF has ever had, if not the most. Oh, Danny White is not stupid, people. I heard that too. Danny White's stupid. He has no idea what he's doing. He needs to fire everybody. He's 50-50 for coaches that he's hired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that's worth dignifying a response.
Coach Heupel has lost, 7 games in his career?
7 games. The highest number of points that were scored that we lost by is 8.
Yeah. We're not getting blown out in these games.
27 total points across all the losses.
If we were getting blown out in these games, I think it would be a completely different story. And I like I said, I do not agree with everything that he does. I hate that he runs it up the freaking middle all the time with tiny running backs. I hate that. But then again, if you look at the stats for our freaking offense, it's still one of the top offenses in all of college football. But he has no clue what he's doing. He has no clue, right?
Well,
and Danny White has no clue what he's doing because he hired Josh Heupel, because there was nobody else to hire. This is the dumb things that people say.
Well, the games that we haven't performed in, right? So, the argument is being made as well that we don't play well against top opponents. We basically lap everybody else. So everybody who isn't a top team.
Maybe it's the teams are better than us.
I wouldn't even go that far. Honestly, I wouldn't even go that far because the way that we lost in a lot of these games, it was things that we did to ourselves. But that's football again. They're not going to be perfect 100% of the time. There is something to be.
The seasons of 2017 and 2018 were complete anomalies in college football. It does not happen very often, especially 2 years in a row. I've told people this. I've said this till I'm blue in the face the entire time that's happened. It does not happen very often. It just doesn't. I mean,
the one area of opportunity, and we'll potentially explore this at some other time, but Coach Heupel is 2-7, or 2-5 in close games, right? So that is the one area of opportunity, and I don't know if that's a maturation of coach and understanding how to play those games or how to manage those games. But that is something that's now becoming a trend and something I have an eye on. But again, and going back to what I was saying earlier, is he is learning. So you're seeing him learn different things. I mean, in this game, there was There was a series that towards the end, the last series that we had 6 minutes left on the clock. We know we can score in under a minute. And we burned 2 minutes off of that clock. We ended up scoring at the end of it, but we could have used that 2 minutes because I was screaming at the TV because we knew that Cincinnati will play a time of possession game. And they strung out and had that last 4 minutes that they completely ran off the clock.
If we would have scored, if we would have went for the touchdown instead of taking the field goal at one time, we also would have won the game.
Yeah, or if we would have caught the ball a few times, we would have won the game.
If we would have caught the ball instead of it bouncing off of our hands and going into the other person, Cincinnati's hands, we would have won the game.
Marlon Williams.
I mean, yeah, and Marlon Williams is one of the top wide receivers in the country. It's just the game. This is what I'm saying. It's the game of football. That's what happens. Sometimes it doesn't go your way. The ball that they play with is oblong. Right? It's really weird. It's a weird-looking ball. It's a football. It's oblong for a reason. Because when it hits the ground, it does not bounce your way 50% of the time.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And it was still, at the end of the day, a 36-33 game.
It's not that bad. That's what I'm saying.
And you know what?
We can pick it apart on this all that we want.
And I did.
I know. I know you did. But, literally, I thought about this, deep into the morning hours. I just was I was reading everybody's stuff. I liked a few comments and laughed at other comments and all that stuff. But the majority of the comments were stupid. That's all I can say.
I think they were emotional. You know what I mean?
Well, it's emotional stupidity.
Yeah. Because I think, and you'll see this every time if we have a loss, people go completely to the opposite swing of the pendulum. And at the end of the day, it's football. We've lost 3 close games this year. Tulsa, we're learning how to beat Tulsa and Cincinnati. And here's the other thing. They have a coach, too. And Luke Fickell is no slouch. And the adjustment that you saw them make, and I mentioned this.
Cincinnati is so lucky that they have Luke Fickell, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
He is one of the better coaches in all of college football, I believe, personally. And I think you will see him once that Ohio State job
Do you think he'll wait for that?
I think so.
I don't know. If that Michigan job opens up.
Yeah, maybe he'll take that too.
That's a lot of money to
Those
be thrown
two,
into.
either one of them. That would be hard for him, I think, since he's an Ohio State guy, to take that Michigan
But Ryan
job.
Day's not going anywhere. And
No.
I don't know how long he's going to wait.
They're not doing horrible. I mean, they're good, I guess. But who did they get? Did they get beat this week?
No.
They didn't. Oh, no, they were
was
playing
Indiana.
And we all wanted Indiana to beat them, but they didn't. Yeah, that's right.
All right. Now that we got that out of the way.
Go ahead. I mean, it's pretty much out of the way. I mean, there's probably going to be more of it because we're going to
sprinkle it in.
We're going to do I Ask Knightline a lot earlier this week because I don't want to talk about everything before these Ask Knightline questions because, I mean, we've probably talked about a lot of it already.
Well,
unfortunately.
And just so you know, I don't look at those Ask Knightline questions until we get to that segment. So that
somebody
I don't
has to put them in here, so I do. But, yeah. So we'll get to those here shortly. Let's do what you want to do here real quick, and I'll play some clips. There's not a lot of clips this week. The audio wasn't horribly great, and they just didn't really say a lot that was interesting. So.
Well, defensively, the team actually played pretty well, especially in the first half. We held Cincinnati in the first quarter and second quarter.
Running game. I kept looking up at the scoreboard and seeing -7.
Yeah.
-7 yards rushing for the longest time, and I was just like, wow. You know, like, does anybody, like, actually see that? Or do they see what we're doing here? -7 yards rushing, almost an entire half.
And what they did was they did what we said and everybody knew that they needed to do, which is contain Ritter and keep him in the pocket. Because their game plan was Ritter's not going to beat us on the ground. He's going to have to beat us in the air. And their running back, even though he had a pile of yards, he only averaged 3.2 yards per carry. So we kept them in front of us, and that was successful. That allowed us to stack the box, get after the quarterback, get a lot of tackles for a loss, a few sacks here and there, and all of that. So the scheme worked in the first half. What they changed was they started using the tight end, and at one point they actually had, I believe it was 4 tight ends in one play. So they bunched them on the right-hand side, and then they had the one tight end slip out to the left-hand side and then passed it to him. But what they were essentially doing was they were setting up an option for a moving or roving option for Ritter. So they would pull that tight end out, and so then that safety or whoever was covering him had to make a decision. Either I'm going to continue to spy Ritter, and I'm going to bite on Ritter, or I'm going to have to play with this tight end. If they play with the tight end, then Ritter's going to take off for 7 or 8 yards. If they play it close with Ritter, then he's going to dump it off to the tight end while he's rolling. And that's exactly what they did, and they did it successfully, and that was an adjustment that Cincinnati made that was very successful, because the way that we play our defense, our linebackers cannot cover that much space and that much ground that quickly. So that means your cornerback is going to have to release and take a gamble that his guy is going to be wide open with no help, and he's going to bite down on the tight end. And so when we were successful at mitigating that was when Ritter was not running to the same side, and we were able to have a good enough angle to keep the yards after catch low, because we could force them to the boundary and out. And so in the second half, they made some adjustments, they made some wrinkles, and they made us pay for it, because then that opened up the passing game in the middle, and we started playing zone coverage. And once we started playing zone coverage, then that played right into their hands. And, of course, they had the lead, and playing with the lead, it's advantageous for them to pick their poison and play the type of time of possession game that they want to play.
And our defense got tired. Going back just a little bit, I need to back up just a little bit, because I was not looking at the full stats when I was talking about Jacob Harris. I apologize. You are right. I forgot about the 41-yarder that he had. I don't know how I could forget about that. It was the heat of the moment, folks. Anyway, yeah, he had 2 catches for 66 yards, actually the second highest number because of that 41-yarder. Anyway, I was wrong.
And that 41-yarder wasn't an easy catch.
It was not. Yeah, you're right. I remembered it, but I couldn't remember if it was him or O'Keefe that caught that one, but it was Jacob Harris. So I apologize, Jacob Harris. I was looking at the wrong page on the stats. They do this little, at the beginning of the stats, they do this little, what do they call it? A quickie statistics, which is not the entire thing. So I did not see the entire thing there.
Now, something, since you mentioned statistics, something that jumped off on the defense was Richie Grant and Tatum Bethune. We've been talking about Tatum Bethune a lot, and he's really turned it on in the last 3 or 4 games.
He's my favorite player now on this defense.
Wow.
He's my new favorite player. It used to be Antoine Collier, but obviously
he's not here
anymore. So, yeah, Tatum Bethune. In fact, I was talking to his mom on Twitter. I was like, her has Bethune in her name, and said something about his birthday or something. I was like, oh, you're Tatum Bethune's mom. He's my new favorite player, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, not kissing butt or anything like that. I really feel like this guy, I thought it really the first time I saw him play, and I've explained this a couple times, there's not a lot of people that you're just watching a game and then someone really stands out to you. But in that game, it was last year sometime, but he just really caught my eye, and I just can't wait to see what this guy does.
I think a lot of what you're seeing, too, or what you're feeling is the same connection you had to Collier, is because he's a hard-hitting, smash-mouth football player, right? Yeah. He'll take your head off. And you heard even the announcers talking about that during the game, and he really puts it all out there, and for old-school defenders like us, I mean, that's what you did. You separate the body from the ball.
And Brash is another guy. Morris Brash is another guy like that. Yeah,
he's just got to learn technique. That's his big thing.
Yeah.
So
we need more guys like that too. Baptiste could possibly be one of those guys as well.
Yeah. So Bethune, he finished with 10 tackles, 6 solos, 1 sack, 2.5 tackles for a loss, and a QB hurry. So he was all over the field yesterday. unfortunately, our middle linebacker, Gilliard, did not have as good of a game. He was getting eaten alive out there. So he played a little bit better last game. Again, they relied on him to drop into coverage. I know people say, oh my gosh, our linebackers are slow when they drop into coverage. But look at it, too. The way that these guys are setting up these plays offensively with our defense, which was predicated on the box and making quick decisions on where you're going to go, that's a lot of field for these guys to cover to try to catch these quick hitters. And when you've got a giant tight end out there, that doesn't help matters either. And he actually moved pretty well. So, to me, understand that defense played really, really well. Offensively, we obviously missed some opportunities. There were 6 drop passes out there. However, Dylan Gabriel, people were banging on Dylan a little bit.
That's crazy.
If you take those drops out, and the drops were not like hard drops. They were not fingertip drops. They hit them in the chest and bounced off or whatever. 65% completion percentage against one of the top-rated defenses in the country, which, by the way, only allowed 12 points per game.
And we scored 33.
Yes, and SMU only scored like 12, and they were one of the top offenses as well. So at the end of the day, this offense played pretty well. Again, missed opportunities. We still scored over 30 points, which continued that streak going. It's just missed opportunities. The ball did not bounce our way this week, and obviously it's frustrating because we could all see it. We could all see us winning this game, a path to win this game. Everybody was hyped up in the first quarter. Another missed.
I thought after the first series we had it. To be honest with you, because we marched it right down the field on that first series, and it was no question who was the better team to me at that point.
Well, and I still think we are. I just think that I do. I really we have the better skill players. They just had an off night, and quite frankly,
Cincinnati is a heck of a football team.
I'm not saying they're not.
I mean, all together.
They're a consistent football team. They don't make mistakes. And if you don't make mistakes in football, for example, turnovers. One of the things we talked about last week that was going to be super important was turnovers, right?
Yep.
So we got that turnover on that punt. We had another opportunity for that, and unfortunately, we didn't come up with it. We had it in our grasp, and then the guy ripped it away, and we lost that turnover, and then we had that fluke interception. So it ended up 1-1. One of the things we said in order for us to win this game is we needed to get more turnovers than they did, and we're averaging, I think it's like something like 2.8 a game. So, we just defensively, they took the opportunity when that ball was flying in the air. They had a tip drill. The guy caught it. He did what he was supposed to do. So they just consistently were good at these things. Now, one of the things that Dylan did that was a little bit different is we changed up the cadence. I don't know if you noticed that or not. We drew them off sides 2 times, which resulted in free plays, one of which we didn't get to take advantage of. But that was some heads-up play on Dylan because he was getting in with the clap count as well.
Absolutely. No, that was great. Yeah. So
one of the things, to your point, one of the big things that we talk about consistently is does Heupel change up his approach, right? And some things that we saw differently in the last few games, too, is that us passing versus running on first down. Now, there were some... I don't know if you guys Knight Nation have noticed this, but in the past, we passed coming out in the first and second quarter, or we ran consistently for the first half of the season. Now we've switched up where we're passing first quarter and second quarter, and then we're running towards the second half of the game. Again, these are learning moments. I could pick things apart, like why are we running on 2nd and 11 late in the game? With our running backs. I mean, they were showing a zone coverage, and they called the run. So it didn't work out. I still would have preferred to pass it in that situation just because it was 2nd and 11. I get it. They're trying to set up a manageable third down and try to catch the defense sleeping. It didn't work out. So there's going to be moments like that where they're purposefully trying to play the odds, and they showed it at the end of the game. The Cincinnati guy was walking around with this giant book, and it was about 2.5 inches thick, and all it is percentages. If this situation happens, then you play this percentage because you have more success. And they do that for every team. right? So this is part of the prep work of big-time college football. And you better believe that UCF has the same type of book and what they're doing, and they're making those decisions around those percentages. It's not Josh Heupel just saying, hey, I think we should run the ball in this situation.
Right.
They have situational football set up, and it's done pursuant to our segment by the numbers.
Right.
So, that's the big thing.
By the way, they ran for 48 times and passed 32 times. We passed 49 times and ran 35 times. Just so we know the numbers there. So we actually passed a little bit more than we ran. It's been a little bit more even than that before. Their running game 144, ours 116, and they're passing 482 to 359. No, 330. I'm sorry, they're passing 338 to our 243. So their total yards 482, our total yards 359, which is far lower than we normally. Not the last two games, but
way higher than what they normally allow too.
Way higher.
So I think it's like 60 yards or 70 yards more than what they generally allow. The big thing there for us is, and what I take out of that too is our red zone offense was much better.
It was.
If you look at one of the things that they've been working all year long, and towards the beginning of the year, we were all pulling our hair out, like, why were we doing so poorly in the red zone? And this week they showed a lot of variety. We got it done on the ground. The offensive line got good push when we were in goal line stances, and you also saw some passes into the end zone. So.
By the way, this is also probably one of the worst officiated games that I have ever seen in my life. It was horrible. It was horrible in the stadium. I'm sure it was horrible on TV too.
It's probably worse in the stadium.
I don't know if they really played it out and if they said anything on the...
They gave a lot of explanations, which was good, because even they had this guy, they have their rules book guy that when they have a question, when the announcers have a question, they're like, okay, what's the deal with this? And he explained it really well. So we had the benefit of that. There were 2 or 3 calls that were like, what? And then he explained it and it made sense. So,
and they stopped play a couple times and didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
And then I don't know how the was it a 2-point conversion at one point down in the end zone by the scoreboard? I don't even remember. It probably was the third quarter. It was a 2-point conversion that we made, and there was a lot of confusion down there on the field. Like, we wanted it in a certain spot.
Yeah, it was the hashes. It was
right.
left,
but then it wasn't on
right.
It was back farther than it normally would have been as well. It was not in the right spot.
Yeah, Coach Heupel, they were showing him on the screen, and he was going nuts because he kept saying right hash, right hash, right hash, right hash, and then the guy moved it from the right hash to the left hash, and then there was an explanation that came back, and I don't know if you heard it in the stadium, that basically what they were saying was because it was within a certain distance from the goal line, and it was a certain distance from the boundary that they were moving it to the left hash. But the guy even said that's completely wrong. It should be on the right hash, and that's what Coach was screaming about.
Yeah, it was very weird in the stadium because you really don't get any explanation, and then the microphone on the
cuts out.
It was horrible for the
and the lights
referee.
cut out.
Yeah, that was weird too. So there was some definite weirdness in this game. Some juju maybe or something. I don't know.
Something was going on.
That was very weird with the lights. I was wondering. In fact, I don't even know what happens. I know that they would delay until they could get those lights going, but for only so long, I think. And then I don't know if you would have a game if you couldn't have your lights back on. And Cincinnati was leading at that point, and I'm like, oh man. Are they going to call it and give it to Cincinnati
Kinda
if we
like
can't
the
get these lights
game
back
a few
on?
years
Yeah,
ago?
I mean, I don't know what happens. That doesn't happen very often. We'd have to really look back to find something like that. That was very weird, though.
Yeah, it was extremely weird because it was right before the half, and I think we were driving, and
I wonder how well those players could see out there as well. I was thinking this is like backyard football. It's starting to get dark. Is it a disadvantage for the team that has the ball when the lights aren't on.
Yeah, they said they were going to try to reset them at the half because I guess there's a long process to do that. So they didn't want to stop play because they felt like there was enough light to continue on before the half.
Man.
So
it was weird.
The other thing too is poor tackling. We did really good job on tackling in the first half. You saw there was this play with drop Trayvon Morris Brash. He was playing the inside, then he rolled back out to the outside when Ritter tried to make a decision to go to the outside. We were firing on all cylinders in that first half, and then the second half, the normal mistakes started coming in, right? So you saw Richie Grant a couple of times where he read a play wrong, and it ended up with a couple of guys that were free. One resulted into a touchdown. So even our best guys will make a mistake here and there. I mean,
and then players get tired too. People need to remember this: they're human. They're not robots.
We don't. Well, and
that's part of the deal. We have been the people to wear out other defenses. We got worn out in this game.
Well, there's a couple of things to talk about there. You mentioned it earlier about players being out. I mean, 17% of your roster is gone. Right. And that's and on top of that, we had folks that were expected to start that were gone, right?
Yeah.
So Tay Gowan from the whole COVID thing, and then you had the situation that happened a few weeks ago. So it's actually even a higher percentage of your expected starters were out. So rotationally, you saw guys that were out there, Gaines, those guys, they were out there.
And you have
to
give those guys that started these games that were not projected starters, and even during the season when these guys, only the last couple of games, these guys were never the starters. They would rotate in and out, but there's 4 guys out there, 3 or 4 guys that weren't not starters.
Yeah.
And they've gone in and done a heck of a job. And again, that was the number 7 team in the nation that we were playing with, players that were not the actual starters.
Well, we took away the long passing game. Not that they had a great one to begin with, but those guys, those cornerbacks, did a great job sticking to their guys. The places where we got exposed a little bit was the middle of the field and with the tight end play. That was pretty much their entire second half, and we just couldn't close that gap. We couldn't adjust. Our zones were spread too far apart because of the way that we play. And people were wondering, well, where'd the pass rush go? Well, when you've basically got an extra person that's continuously creating an option play on outside the tackles, it's going to be really, really hard for your defense. It only works if you keep them in front of you. And they were passing it so quickly. And what you saw Ritter do, he would take, 2-3 steps back, and then he's firing the ball. We don't do that. Dylan sits in the pocket, and he goes for the longer passing plays, right? So typically there's not as much over the field. Now, we do it occasionally, but one of the opportunities that I saw, and I thought about this during the game, and then I didn't mention it to Kyle, but I should have. Something you can continuously saw was if our running back read the linebackers and whether they were coming into the gaps or not. If he wasn't handed the ball and it was a pass play, he was slipping out directly into the middle of the field. I do not know why, with as talented as our running backs are, we don't take advantage of that in a check down and just pass it, 3-4 yards beyond the line of scrimmage and let them run with the ball. That's another way to get your playmakers open in space.
The screen was not working for us the other night.
No, at all.
Yeah. It was there, but it wasn't working.
And then the other thing that really, caught my eye, again, Obarski's been one of those guys that's been dragged through the mud quite a bit. But this game, I don't know what we're going to do about kickoffs. But at some point, we've really got to either get...
There was some wind.
Yeah.
We will say that there was wind in this game. It was windy out there, and I don't know. I don't want to make excuses for him, but yeah. He's got to work on that, obviously. That gives them a great field position when that happens.
Well, it gives them field position, but it also, not only does it make them work harder for longer to get that, and the longer you have to go, especially if you're going shorter distances on each pop, right? Our game is to go a long pass to eat up a whole chunk of yards. The more downs that you have to play, the less likely it is that you make it into scoring range, right? So that's a part of the problem, but also it changes your defense. If you can't play the same defense if someone's on the 35 as if they're on the 25 or even by the goal line. So that's a key to that, that people aren't thinking about, because schematically you're going to change what you're doing and you're going to bomb rush the quarterback, and they have to change what they're doing when they're in backed up against their goal line. And you saw that happen to us. Yeah. When the plays where we didn't make it, where we didn't move the ball, the 3 and outs and everything else, was when we were within the 20 and really around the 10 for most of it, where it changes the dynamic of what your offense can do because of the space, just like when you get in the red zone. So on the opposite end. So we can't make stupid mistakes like that. That should be something that's just automatic. Either kick it out of the back of the end zone or something.
Yeah. All right. Let's hear from Josh Heupel and what he had to say to the team after this loss.
Talked a little bit in the beginning just about how little things add up, and doing everything right on and off the field, and every walk of what we're doing will help us achieve what we want to on the field, and we're not far off. I told them I was really proud of their effort, man. We talked about competing for 4 quarters. Look at their scores. They kind of separated from people in the second half of football games. Thought our kids responded and continued to compete, handled the ups and downs of the football game much better than we had early in the season. And that's, I said we're not far off from being a really, really good football team. We have gotten better. Yeah, everybody's disappointed with this result. That's for sure. Our football team's gotten better through the year, and just the competitive spirit, the energy on the sideline, the ability to respond and continue to compete. I thought there were some positives that came out of it too. Obviously, we're all disappointed and want to be on the right side of the scoreboard.
Do you think that we have shown improvement over the year? Do you think that we're a better team now than when we started?
Yes.
I do too.
And especially defensively.
Yeah.
Especially defensively. Offensively, I've seen us change and be able to do more than what we were able to do at the beginning of the year as well. People forget, we introduced screens, we introduced a bunch, the fullback basically set where we have a guy come in who's a fullback. We've had the tight ends do different things on the running game. So there's lots of different little wrinkles that we've seen, the development of a 4-minute offense, being able to slow it down. And that takes practice, guys. It's not just something that you can do in practice and expect for it to translate to the field.
It takes a lot of time installing that in practices as well, new plays.
Especially since we've been one offense for 2 years, right? Yeah. Under Heupel. It's been go, 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 go. You've seen him try to sprinkle this longer possession type game because we tend to get up early, and our challenge has been folks catching us at the end. And this was, again, another double-digit lead at home, right? Yeah. So, at the end of the day, I have seen us make adjustments that have made us better, and defensively as well.
All right, sticking with the better team thing here. Here's what Richie Grant said when he was asked if this is a better team than the beginning of the season.
As a team, yeah, I get at a nod. It's just one of those deals where it's not all together in the beginning. It's not all together. You go through adversity together, fight together. We brothers, so we're going to fight. But, we come back together and talk about it and try to do our best the next week moving forward. But, yes, as a team, definitely better from week 1 to now, handling certain situations better, playing for each other better, and things like that, how a team should.
And then Greg McCrae on the same question.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like today we played, a really good game. We played our hearts out, all phases of the game, offense, defense, special teams. It's just tough not being able to be on the right side of the scoreboard at the end.
And he didn't kind of, answer the question well, but he did say yes, so that kind of helps. Josh Heupel was also asked about the wide receiver drops.
There's things in all areas of the football game that we can be better at. It's never on one guy or one position group. It's all of us together.
And I completely agree with that. Yes, they had some issues, but it's not just because of those drops. Richie Grant on the overall performance of the defense.
I'm going to put that one on me, man. put that one on me. You know, it was a few times in the game where miscommunication, you know, some times where we let the game get from us. But I mean, we came to play. You can see that besides those few times, man, we came to play. Like, you know, those guys came out there, they put their best foot forward. We knew it was going to be a big game. You know, we knew there was a good opponent. And we put our best foot forward. Just got to stop those mistakes, man. Some of the mistakes you can't have.
All right. That's the voice of a leader right there. And we're going to really, really miss him, I believe, on this defense, especially in the secondary, the leadership, which at the beginning of the season, we were kind of like, who are the leaders? Who are the leaders? There's a leader right there.
And a performer.
Absolutely, on both sides. All right, the next one here is Richie Grant as well on his message to his teammates, being a leader going forward.
You know, certain scenarios like this one, you know, you lose a big game, especially for me, you know, it's a big game, my last game at the bounce house, and you still have another one left. Like, do you throw it all in or you go out there and fight again? So, you know, it's just the message would just be to keep moving, man, keep moving, because in life you're going to get hit, you're going to get knocked down. But the true testament of a man, woman, anybody is how you respond when you get knocked down. So that's the message I'll keep preaching them. A message that I've learned throughout my 4 years here or 5 years here, and it rings true every single time.
All right, well, that's good hearing that from him. And then this next one, I believe that I left the question in from the reporter. It's Matt Murschel from the Orlando Sentinel. Just because it makes a little bit more of an impact with this is Coach Heupel, and it fit a lot better with the question in there. I normally don't do that, but here's Josh Heupel on what now.
Yeah, I mean, your goals are kind of off the table right now. What do you tell your team with one regular season game left and a bowl game? What's the message to them now?
Burn this one. It's a quick turnaround. You got a trophy game. Man. Our guys will be ready to go play.
All right. Well, I like that. I like that Heupel said, burn this one. Going forward, we got a trophy game. Our guys will be ready to play.
Yeah,
I like that.
And hopefully we burn them, too.
Yeah.
Some charred steak.
Exactly. Charred brisket.
There you go.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's the clips. They weren't great, but they were. They definitely were. All right, we're going to take a little bit of a break here, and then we're going to be right back, and we're going to go to Ask Knightline early. And then we got Kyle coming up later. We got Ben Stout talking about basketball. We got all kinds of stuff. We're far from being done. You're just going to hear Ask Knightline earlier.
Hey, this is Travis Dever, Kai's Real Estate, the Dever team, New Smyrna Beach. Your source for real estate and everything else, New Smyrna Beach. Proud sponsor of Knightline. Call me anytime at 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636. Let me show you my hometown, New Smyrna Beach, UCF's favorite beach. Go Knights and charge on.
An auto accident can change your life forever. At Chad Barr Law, we are raising the bar on what to expect from your personal injury attorney. Hi, I'm Chad Barr, and I want you to know that our entire team is dedicated to providing you with the representation you deserve in your greatest time of need. If you or a loved one have been injured in an auto accident, call 407-599-9036 for a free consultation or visit chadbarlaw.com. At Chad Barr Law, our clients come to us in need and leave as family. Offices, Altamont Springs.
Ask a Knightline is brought to you by Chad Barr Law. Chad is a UCF alumnus and diehard Knights fan. Chad Barr Law handles auto accident, slip and fall, and personal injury cases. Call Chad today at 407-599-9036 for a free consultation. That's 407-599-9036. Armor up and call Chad Barr Law today. All right, a lot of love for Chad Barr there. Two things in a row. Normally we don't put those two together, but that's where they wound up this time. So, all right, time again for Ask a Knightline, where we're asking or answering your questions. Listeners posted on our Facebook page or Twitter at #AskKnightline. Starting off, you're going to notice a theme here. Me and Angus from Twitter. After 2 disappointing years in a row, is next year make or break for Heupel, or do we give him a mulligan because of the pandemic's impacts? I think I'm just going to go through and read all the questions, and then we'll answer all of them at the same time.
Okay.
How does that work?
Fair enough.
All right. UCF MSU Clemson on Twitter. Did Cincinnati? Well, no, we'll save that one. All right. Well, we'll go back to that one. Golden Knight 2. Do you think we've hit a ceiling with Heupel? Seems that he's only capable of blowing out bad teams or losses or loses to above average opponents. Yeah. Okay. And then Gabriel Heinfield from this was from Facebook, wanted to know your guys' opinion on Coach. He has 7 losses in his time here with 20 plus wins. That would seem to be really good, but coupled with the fact that we are now in that we were in double-digit leads in the 6 of the losses at one point, hard time in the hard time we've had with second half adjustments and seemingly thin offensive pace the seemingly thin offensive playbook people mention a lot. It's hard to feel good with the record. We can't seem to win the first possession games. I don't hate Coach, nor do I want to see him get dragged. He's done a lot of good for our program, in my opinion, but those points do resonate with me, and I'd like to hear your opinion on these things, or at least a few. Okay, so we're going to go with the Heupel thing. We do have a couple more questions that are not completely concerning this. So, look, I just don't feel like it's time to give up completely on Heupel. I just don't. It's early in his coaching career, and I just think that he deserves more time. We've talked about all the other stuff that there's really not someone to replace him with at this point. Yes, I think that he gets a break because it's 2020. I think every coach out there, every football player, everybody gets a break. The NCAA has said everybody gets a break. The NCAA has not said not to fire your coaches, blah, 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 all that stuff. But, yes, it's disappointing. Obviously, 2 years in a row, like me and Angus said. Next year probably is a make-or-break year. I think it would be more feasible if we have a normal football season next year and we have the same outcome. I mean,
do you think it's a make-or-break year, or do you think it's a hot seat year?
I think a hot seat year is a make and break year, isn't it?
No, I think you can start warming up the hot seat, but not be on a make and break year. So when I think of hot seat, I think, okay, someone, if we're saying, hey, he's starting to get on the hot seat, if he has a rough year that next year, then the following year would be decision time, in my opinion, when it comes to that. If we're saying it's make or break, that means, hey, dude, after the season, if you don't pick it up some or you do about where you're at today, we're going to let you go.
So you're saying if he's on the hot seat, or if it's a make and break year next week or next year, then he would have been on the hot seat this year.
Correct.
That's how that works. Okay. Well, then maybe the next year is the make or break.
I would tend to agree with that. I would tend to agree with that take, because I don't think next year or this year Heupel really is going to be under the kind of scrutiny where he would even consider being let go. That I don't think that's on anybody's mind for a myriad of reasons. But, remember, people, we're dealing with a short off-season, short summer conditioning program.
Players opting out.
You heard people were saying that they were out of shape at the beginning of the year. Drop was one of them. He didn't get as much playing time in the first few games because he was out of shape. So, there's a lot of things that were going on this season. And granted, the entirety of FPS football is dealing with that at this time, but I don't see, with us losing, if we started getting blown out, if we were getting our proverbial keisters, I wanted to say something else, handed to us, our butts handed to us, right? Then absolutely, I would say it would be a concern for him and his job. However, that's not happening. We're losing close games. Now, I am concerned with the fact that we've lost the vast majority of those close games. We're 2-5 in those close games under Heupel. However, the man has lost by a combined 27 points across 7 games.
Right. I just think it's way too early to be talking about getting rid of Coach Heupel. And I know that maybe even the majority of the fan base is upset about Coach Heupel. I just think it's the wrong thing to do to blame the guy for everything that happens.
I think the other part, it's hard to get behind him because he's not an emotional guy. He isn't the rah-rah guy to the fan base in front of everybody. He has some speeches in front of his team or whatever, but he's I
wish we saw more of those, by the way.
Yeah.
We should see more of those speeches because I think that would show people the human side of Coach Heupel and what he says to those guys and how he says it.
And that he has emotion.
Yeah.
It's not just... Because look, football is a game of emotion. We've played. We both know that. Right? And especially when you're in tough spots, when you're playing close games, and especially when you're playing from behind or you're in big games. It's sometimes it's just who's going to will it more. And that's in every offensive lineman versus a defensive lineman. That's every wide receiver versus a cornerback. That's every position that you can think of. There are these one-on-one matchups, which is what our offense is predicated off of, is these one-on-one matchups. Win that play.
I can't wait to see next week after we kick USF's butt and, take him slaughter the cows. I can't wait to see what people have to say about Heupel after that.
If they show up.
Well, yeah.
Coronavirus. They've been having some problems over there, so I'm hoping they don't
hopefully we
use
play
that
the
as an
game.
excuse.
Yeah, we haven't. Knock on wood. We haven't. Literally knocking on wood. Hopefully we have
because we
game.
even the series this year, right? I'm pretty sure we even the series this year. So, this would be an opportunity for us now. If old Coach Heupel were to pull the gloves off and truly let us slaughter them, which he hasn't done in the past, I think that might be a way of doing that too.
I don't know if that's his way of doing things. I just don't know if that's his mantra.
It's not.
And he's kind of old school as far as that goes. Our next nearest former coach would have done that. Would have,
Well, I mean,
I don't know. Maybe
he had it done to him. Remember that Taggart situation. So, and here's the thing too. I mean, when you looked at that coach, he would be on the sideline throwing a fit, throwing his clipboard, yelling at referees and all that stuff. And people want to see that you're fighting for the win, right? And I feel like. And Heupel probably understands this. He's a communications major, for God's sake. When you see him on the sideline, you don't see that. You see him very calm and composed, and he doesn't give away anything in press conferences, and he's not cracking jokes like O'Leary did. He's not going to show that personality to anyone. He's
not going to show that emotion.
Yeah,
that's the
exactly
biggest thing.
By design, right?
Yeah,
but at the end of the
absolutely.
day, I think people react to that too, and they project that as to how he leads the team. If he's out there fired up and pushing and whatever, and running up and down the field like some of the other coaches, like Lane Kiffin, who ran 60 yards after a touchdown, I think people see him a little bit differently.
Right. Yeah. So maybe it's just the personality that people don't identify with.
But at the end of the day, as a leader of our football team, right, do I feel like he's the right leader right now? I feel he hasn't changed my mind enough to say that he isn't.
Yeah.
I also think that he's, learning, and I think that's something people have to keep in mind. It's, and he's going to make mistakes, and the players have made mistakes. This isn't all on Coach Heupel.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't execute plays.
Right. Exactly.
Period. There were multiple opportunities for us to win this game, and the players just didn't come through. And it wasn't just one player, it was multiple.
Well, and that's the other thing. I mean, I'm not saying, go out there and blame individual players, because we've seen that as well. But players are the ones that make the plays. The coaches, install everything so the players can make the plays. If the players don't make the plays, we don't win the game.
He called a good enough game for us to win this game.
Absolutely.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah. All right. Back to UCF MSU Clemson's question. Did Cincinnati outplay us, or was it bad coaching? Example, going for it on fourth instead of kicking a field goal. Well, I mean, you never know what's going to happen on that fourth down. The chances, most of the time, Most of the time, we have a kicker that's a little inconsistent, but not horribly inconsistent on field goals.
57%,
with the wind on at his back,
57% was what he was going into the game last week. He was kicking 57%. It's
better than half.
I know that.
Yeah,
but for the season,
so if you're playing the percentages,
but for the season, we've been around 50% for the fourth down conversions as well.
That's true. Well, somebody made the decision that the higher percentage was to kick that field goal.
Right.
So they did
not kick the field goal in this case. This is the one he's talking about where we were going for it on fourth down. The other thing to me, let me put it to you this way, and something.
Something I got it backwards.
Yeah, and something that would go through my mind is, one, you want to fire up the team and get back the momentum. How do you do that? You get that fourth down, you go get a touchdown, right? You don't settle for a field goal, number one. Number two, you believe in your team. They have consistently, especially when they were on goal line, they were able to get those short yardage situations. This time it didn't work out, and you know what? If we're talking about kicking a field goal, okay, maybe we get the 3 points there, maybe we're talking about a tie. But it's not going to effectively change the game, because the way Cincinnati won this game was they got ahead of us and they were able to play their game. Once that was taken away from us, that's where we lost this game. It wasn't on those 3 points.
Yeah. Okay. Brian W. Peterson's question on Twitter. Now can we talk about our abysmal number 7 recruiting rank in the AAC so far? If you thought this year was bad, how about if we keep the recruiting like this? Why am I the only one concerned by this? Abysmal is a pretty strong word to use as far as recruiting goes. I saw that a lot last night as well. We don't recruit Florida. We don't recruit Florida. We don't recruit Florida. We get the players that we can get from wherever they come from. I've said this all along. I mean, not all the players come from Florida. A lot of them do. There are good players, but there's also 129 other teams, or 128, whatever it is this year, that want players from Florida.
Mikey Keene is from Arizona and is one of the top-rated quarterbacks in the entire country and plays on the highest level of high school football.
Right.
Okay.
But we're abysmal in recruiting.
Let me put it to you this way. I don't think we're abysmal in recruiting. I do think that we don't have a full class filled out yet. We're not even close. And I think the other part that's hurting us, honestly, is one of our biggest selling points is getting people on campus. And we haven't had that, especially for kids that are out of state.
Last year, was recruiting horrible?
No.
We got some good players.
The players that we brought in are playing now.
Right.
Look at our freshman cornerbacks. Look at Ryan O'Keefe. Look at those guys. They're starting to make strides, and they just haven't had the chance to play.
Was Heupel's first year of recruiting horrible? I mean, it was hard that year, though, because he came in late.
Yep.
Frost took all the recruiting stuff with him, took players with him, took the entire staff with him, and cleared all the computers at UCF of all the information.
Cam Good?
Yeah.
Drop?
I mean, I'd have to look at all the people that were in that class, but I don't think recruiting has been that horrible, and maybe that's why he's the only one. He's not the only one, because I have seen this as well. But I just don't think that it's horrible.
I think we're early in the cycle.
We've always recruited players that other people didn't want at UCF.
But I think
we've always done.
I think we're also in the mix for players that other people do want.
Yeah, and we have.
And that's
Dylan Gabriel.
Well, yeah.
Obviously, he came with Mackenzie, but
look at the Florida kids, right? So let's talk about Florida again.
I'm going to look up and see his first year, and I just want to look real quick at some of the. Go ahead.
If you don't think that Randy Shannon is recruiting South Florida, I don't know what else to tell you. But I can tell you this. There are a lot of kids out there who don't want to commit, one, because there's been a no-contact period that's been extended multiple times, and right now it's through December, and it's looking to be extended again. And by that, I mean they can't come to campus and visit. A lot of kids are holding off, hoping that they're actually going to get the full experience, right? Because one of the things that's part of recruiting is going to all these different schools and getting courted. and they're losing out on that opportunity. I feel we've had a lot of people that we've had in our back pocket. We're competing for a lot of people, and we don't see all of that's going on. There's constantly people moving up and down boards. There's a list of players that they rank that we're constantly recruiting. Some of them are attainable, some of them are not, and there'll be some that'll fall through the cracks. It's just in our position and where we're at. We're going to get the highest rated player that we can. Sometimes that's in Florida, sometimes that's outside of the state.
Yeah. All right. So 2019 would have been the first year, correct, of his recruiting. Tremont Morris-Brash, Dylan Gabriel, Adrian Medley, offensive lineman from Hawaii, which I can't, Lukali Pule, I can't say.
Pualit.
Yeah. Jared Baker, Demarius Good, Jalen Pinkley, Keenan Hester, Raymond Cutts, who hasn't really played that much.
Well,
Justin
remember,
Maynard.
he was the one that was
that's the one that was arrested, yeah. Alan James, Tatum Bethune, Ryan O'Keefe, Daniel Orbowski, James Tarver, William Hancock, Tay Gowan,
who opted out.
Cameron Green, I don't know, Matt Lee, Baptiste, and Amari Johnson. So I don't think it's horrible. A lot of these guys are just finally starting to get some playing time.
Yeah, there's a lot of starters in that list.
Yeah, there are now. Yeah. And then, last year, Devontae Brown's he's starting games at this point. Salazar, Cradle, we see every once in a while. I wish we would see him more. Quade Mosier. Who else here? Yeah, so, these players aren't really... Johnny Richardson, I think he's going to be exciting. Corey Thornton is a true freshman.
He's playing.
Jordan Davis hasn't had a chance to play. He's still hurt from his high school career, tore his ACL. So, there's players in here. These are the players that you're going to see a little bit more of next year.
Right.
So, I don't think it's... For me on recruiting, you have to see the coaches' players at their junior or senior year, right, to really see what they turned out to be, because that's the way that players come through the whole thing, unless they're something extremely special and can play on their first year. To me, right now we're seeing we're seeing Frost's players graduate and end their careers, and a lot of them were pretty good.
Yep.
So I think it'll be the same. We'll see a couple of years. I'm not horribly worried.
Let me say this about that. I'm not worried yet. And here's why I'm not worried yet is because we're not towards the end of the recruiting season. They got a lot of times when it comes to this kind of stuff, the earlier commits are ones that they don't have the highest ranked on their boards, because one, they won't commit at that early in the game because they want to see what they get. And number two, all the time, and bigger programs as well, they're going to bring those people in first, so they've got a baseline, and then they're going to go compete for the rest of those bigger names that they're looking for. How many commits do we have on there? I think we were at 12, 13 commits, somewhere around there.
For this next year?
Yeah.
Well, let's see what Rivals says. 17 is what it says.
So we just had that German offensive lineman yesterday, and I think we had one dip out that was a JUCO transfer commit. So wide receiver. So I don't know if he's still on there, but it's somewhere around that number. We have plenty of opportunity to go after some other guys, and I guarantee you that those higher guys that are on the board, right, that are higher up on the board, they are not willing to commit yet, and we're going to continue fighting for them towards the end. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're holding on to some JUCO guys, because remember, the JUCO guys didn't play this year.
You got to think about transfers as well, because there's lots of transfers. The recruiting game has changed with the transfers, and they're not included in this stuff. So they're not included in the ranking. Right now we rank 75th with this class on Rivals right now, 75th. But it's only with 17 people. Last year, 2020, we were, let it refresh here, 58th out of all the college football teams. And the year before that, 52.
And there's approximately 68 automatic qualifiers for the college football playoff. Remember that. The Power 5 teams, right?
Right.
There's around 68 of those. So we're recruiting at a higher level than several Power 5 teams. So think about that and put that in perspective. The difference between us and Cincinnati's class, like I looked at this last week, was we had 2 2-stars, we had 2 more 3-stars, and they had 1 4-star. That was the difference.
Yeah. All right, thank you for your questions, everybody. Really appreciate you guys interacting with us. I'm sorry, but I just don't agree on the Bash and Heupel, and that he's at his ceiling and all that stuff. But I do really appreciate the questions, and it's fun to go through these and comment on them. But we just don't agree a lot of times, which is fine. That's what we do. That's why we talk about it. This all, gets the conversation going, and we really, really appreciate it. All right, so thank you. Coming up is Kyle Israel with his recap of the Cincinnati game. Hey, Jeep Wrangler owners, have you ever sat in your office at work and watched the rain just pour into your Jeep because the weatherman said that there was a 0 chance of rain? Or you put your doors back on because there was a 100% chance and then not a drop of rain fell? Well, there's a company out there that can help take the worry away and give you the peace of mind to be without your doors. The company's called Life Without Doors. They make waterproof rain curtains and dash covers for Wranglers. Life Without Doors is there to help make the decision to leave the doors at home an easy one. Find out more at lifewithoutdoors.com.
Spice up your company with homemade marketing services from Tasty Gravy Creative. Tasty Gravy serves up a menu of budget-friendly marketing, graphic design, and public relations services customized to your specific goals. Co-owned by a UCF graduate, Tasty Gravy can help refresh your brand, strengthen your online presence, or reinforce your company's message. Contact Tasty Gravy for help with your website, social media, marketing, advertising materials, and more. Visit tastygravy.com.
All right, please welcome back Kyle Israel. Kyle, I kind of hate to talk to you after a game like this. What a crazy game. We kind of talked about how we thought that they could pull it off, and they were very close to pulling it off. Luckily, Luke Fickell's a really nice guy, and he didn't run that last touchdown in where he obviously probably could have, or we would have lost by 10 points. But 3 points isn't bad against what is arguably the number 7 team in the entire United States.
No, I mean, I agree. To your point there at the end, there was that kind of botched snap. They could have shot themselves in the foot big time had that turned out another way. But listen, I mean, before we start into UCF at all, you got to give Cincinnati a level of credit. I mean, they're a very, very good football team. They're very old as far as junior and senior led team. So, this is the year that I think, in my opinion, they've got to make some things happen. And they are. And they have a very good defense. I think one thing that I recognized on TV is just the size of their players, the size and maturity physically of their defensive backs and defensive linemen and linebackers. And they're coached very, very well. And so, before we talk about where UCF could have done better, I think we just got to give credit for a second to Cincinnati and what they've built up there because they have a very good football team.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you, and I'm not trying to take anything away from them at all. They shut down our offense for the most part. Dylan Gabriel, 26 of 49, 243 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 sacks, and an interception, which was weird, that interception.
Not his fault, I didn't feel like.
No, and there's certain people out there, though, that want to blame this on him, believe it or not, and that's crazy. I just think it's interesting, and I'm going to get into this now, I guess. It's interesting how our fan base has gone from a fairly good-thinking fan base to pure emotion, and blaming the wrong people, and the sky is falling at any chance, and then it's ebb and flow. One time everybody's great, one time they hate everybody. I guess that's part of growing up as a fan base.
Yeah, I think there's a maturation process that has to take place. I mean, I'll be careful about what I say, but
I'm not anymore.
We
I
have
don't
some
think
shitty fans at times, in my
Exactly.
opinion, and people that don't have a clue about what they're talking about or what they're seeing. But I think you can't put that game on Dylan. Listen, he's playing one of the better defenses in the country, one of the better defensive backfields in the country. There were plays that other players on the team let him down. We dropped a number of passes throughout the game.
6.
I think that, 6 of them, and some of those being extremely crucial. And really by a guy, Marlon Williams, with 2 of those, one that led to an interception and one on 4th down, that he simply can't drop, and that's just the way it is. He did so many other great things throughout the course of the game, but I know that he's kind of looking back probably in his wherever he lives and saying, man, I wish I had that 4th down one back, or I wish I didn't let that ball go through my hands. But Dylan wasn't helped out, I think, in some situations from play calling. And certainly by his teammates at times, but I would not put the blame on Dylan. I think you got to remember, number one, he's a sophomore. He's still young. He's played a lot of games, played more games than I did at UCF, started more games than I did. So you'd like to think that he's a little bit down the road some, but at the same time, I mean, we're going against a really good opponent. And, I just think there were some things that we could have done to help him out on 1st and 2nd down.
Well, speaking of that, do you blame Coach Heupel for losing this game?
Kind of ish, because he's the offensive play caller as well. And I just think our tempo is not what makes us better than everybody else. It's not what gives us our advantage. It's an element. It's a huge piece. But our talent is what separates us. Our speed is what separates us. And it's almost like we, on 1st and 2nd down, we're willing to waste plays, or we don't value those plays as much. And you saw when we got up 14-3, it was man, I want to feel good right now, but I'm more nervous than I was even when the game started, because we had those, I don't even know how many series it was, maybe 2, 3, 4 series there where we didn't even get a 1st down. And when you have a team, and I was watching the game with a couple buddies, and I was screaming out loud, put your foot on their throat and don't let it off until they can't breathe anymore. Keep your foot on their throat. And I felt like we needed to be able to do that with our offense. I felt like we needed to be able to do that with long and sustained drives, so that Ritter and their offense couldn't get in any type of flow. And getting up 14-3, we weren't able to keep our foot on their throat, and we weren't able to have great play calling really on 1st and 2nd down that could keep drives sustained.
I'm going to let Roger get into this in a moment, but would you say that we're one-dimensional because of that?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean,
when you say one-dimensional, in what element, what aspect?
Well, as far as not being able to, we're able to go fast, but we aren't really able to slow down very much, and we aren't able to adapt very well to what the defense is giving us.
Consistently, yes. Consistently. Yeah. There's times where you see Dylan get up there and he'll kind of clap his hand, and then the whole offense will look over to the sideline, and we actually, all of a sudden, the play clock's down to 10 seconds or something, and we snap the ball. But I think I said it last week. I certainly said it after the Memphis game. In real time, it's one thing to have a talented offense. It's one thing to be able to move the ball quickly. But, how much of that talent, how much of that offense are you able to control in real time? That's what matters most. And that goes for players and for coaches. And so I think we've got to be able to see in a game in real time, this is the situation. This is the scenario. What does this call for? If it calls for us slowing down our offense, slowing down our play calling, becoming creative in certain scenarios, getting our best matchups possible, we got to do a better job at that. And, our talent and our speed is is better than most other teams that we play. And sometimes we just try to leverage the tempo rather than leveraging the talent. And I think that hurts us, and it makes us feel very one-dimensional. And so, yeah, that's very frustrating.
Well, Kyle, one of the things that frustrated me, honestly, is there was I think it was the last possession that we had. We ended up scoring on the play, but we had about 6 minutes left, and we wasted about 2 minutes of it going extremely slow. And in my mind, I was thinking, okay, we need as many opportunities as we can to stop Cincinnati to try to get the ball back and score. And we can score in a minute and a half, no problem when we have those big plays. That was extremely frustrating to me because I knew that they could stretch out the last 4 minutes of the game, which is exactly what they did and what we were trying to avoid. My question to you is, when we're thinking about Dylan himself, and I was watching him throughout the game, but does it seem like the last 2 games, maybe injuries are catching up with him or something, or is it just pure nervousness where he was floating a lot of passes early on? He did that last game as well that he would normally hit. Now, that being said, you take those 6 drops out, he still completed 65% of his passes, and that was under duress. So, I mean, you can't really ask much more of that. That being said, do you see a difference in him? Because he seems like he's less crisp. He seems like he's floating balls more. Is there anything that you're seeing that's changed?
Well, it's hard to tell. I think I've recognized that some. It comes and goes, kind of, right? Because you see some of the balls that he threw even last week, like that touchdown to Marlin in the back of the end zone. I went on record and said it's like one of the best touchdowns I've ever seen in our school's history. Best throw, best catch. You see him zip that ball into Marlin. Yeah, a little bit behind him, a little bit. But it goes right through his hands for an interception. He throws an accurate ball on 4th and 3, and it gets dropped. But there are some balls on the outside that are down the sideline or over the middle, kind of. Like, we sometimes have some over the middle throws. I just think that our offense, the angles of the throws are challenging. It's like you're either throwing something way out to the sideline, you're throwing something deep down the field on the outside, which is a low percentage throw, or you're throwing some type of slant route. But, what made Cincinnati so good in retrospect, Dylan's a much better passer than Ritter. But Ritter gets these wide-ass open receivers flying across the field with a guy 3 yards behind him. And that's an easy throw with a guy moving across your face, and you're just putting it out in front of him. And I feel like we force Dylan to make really, really tough, tight window throws a lot. Now, the first touchdown to Marlin, Cincinnati blew the coverage, and Dylan did a good job of getting rid of it on that slant route in the end zone. But I think that he's a little less crisp. But I think it's because, number one, defenses are playing us a little bit different. They're putting pressure on us, and they're forcing him to move around in the pocket. But secondly, when you think back to the Georgia Tech game, or you think to some of those earlier games, it felt as though he was more in sync with what he wanted to do. And I think the defenses and defensive coordinators have done a good job of getting him out of rhythm. And it'll be interesting to see how this game finishes next week and how this season finishes and where McKenzie's recovery is as we go into next season. If in fact McKenzie decides to stay at UCF, I think that, in a scenario that I thought that Dylan should be our starting quarterback for the next 2 years. And again, I'm not placing any of the game's blame on him. I'm just saying there's now some glaring losses in what would McKenzie done in those games? How would he have performed? And I think that question becomes more relevant when you lose some games like this.
Yeah, I can see that. Although, people are questioning, well, Frost would have won this game. Frost would have done this. Frost would have done that.
Frost is getting his ass kicked.
Absolutely.
Somewhere else.
Nebraska looked horrible yesterday.
Right now.
Yeah, I watched that game as much as I could, and it was horrible. Absolutely horrible. What about the defense? The defense first in the first half was just kicking butt. 7 yards. It was -7 for like the longest time Cincinnati had rushing the ball. It was insane. We really were holding them, and then all of a sudden, I guess they got tired and couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah, well, here's my one question mark, and I don't know if you guys recognize this, but when Morris Brash was in the game, he was all over the field. I mean, just either making sacks or tackling guys for loss or disrupting the backfield. And then all of a sudden, it's like he's out of the game for 2 series. And I even tweeted yesterday, I think one time, like, where's Brash? Like, how this guy is arguably one of the best motors on our defense. And in some series, he's just not out there after making such a big impact on the first couple of drives of the game. So that was my first question. Like,
I know that he went down at one point and looked fairly injured at one point during the game.
I didn't see it. I didn't see that.
He was definitely one of the ones that was down at one point, and I don't remember what point in the game that was. He came out with 6 total tackles, a sack, and a couple 1.5 tackles for loss. So
I just felt like when he was on the field, Cincinnati knew it, and he was creating scenarios for other guys to make plays. But would you guys have the stats for the time of possession in front of you? I think they may have had like 15 more minutes or something.
Yeah. It was
22 minutes to 37, if I recall correctly.
Something like that. I have it here, but it was 37:08 to 22:51.
That was close.
Well, there's 15 extra minutes there. Yeah, you were close, Roger, for remember that. There was 15 extra minutes there that I think as you get into later in a ball game, like that starts to
and that's where it really showed up as well. So let's do it by the first quarter. First quarter, we had 8 minutes and 28 seconds. They had 6 minutes and 32 seconds. Second quarter, we had 7:23. They had 7:37. Now here's where it really changes. The third quarter, they had 12 minutes and 18 seconds. We had 2 minutes and 42 seconds. And if you remember that first drive coming out after the kickoff for halftime, I looked up at the clock and I'm like, oh my God, that drive took like 10 minutes. It took like 10 minutes off the clock. It was crazy. And then in the fourth quarter, the same thing, 10 minutes 41 for them. We had 4 minutes and 18 seconds.
Yeah. And so I think that's one of the big key factors right there. Is that time of possession in the second half. Our defense is going to get worn down. And I know we have the luxury of rotating some guys. I'm not sure if that is a luxury advantage because that means that we're not really anchored into some key guys playing all the time. But I thought there were spurts where the defense looked phenomenal. And there were spurts where, Cincinnati was going to get some of theirs. But we could just never adjust to the crossing routes across the field. We made number 81 look like an All-American. And I feel bad for Cincinnati. I would have lost my mind if I was one of their fans if that play got blown dead where he kind of broke that tackle and turned the corner and scored, and they called it back. But I think that there were a couple things that really stuck out to me. I said last week we've got to take advantage of every single opportunity we can for turnovers. I think, Richie Grant may have had another dropped interception yesterday that could have changed some of the game. We had an opportunity to recover a muffed punt for the second time in the game, and we weren't able to do that. And when I saw that we didn't get that recovery, and then we got a personal foul penalty on the play, that's like a 14-point swing in the game. Because we would have been in the red zone and poised to score. And I just felt like at that point, I'm like, we cannot let these type of little opportunities slip away because we need to take advantage of them to beat a team like Cincinnati, and we weren't able to do so. But I was pretty pleased with our defense hanging in there for the most part. They gave us a chance to win. There's no doubt about that, but I think that they just got worn down in the second half.
Yeah, and the turnovers just weren't happening. We got the first one, and then no more after that. So the fumble recovery on the muffed punt. And then after that, and that's what our defense has really done throughout the season, and we've won a lot of games because of the turnover ratio, and it just didn't happen in this game. I kept waiting for it to happen, but it just didn't. Yeah.
Kudos to Cincinnati for practicing and holding on to the ball and avoiding those things.
Yeah, and then Dokes, the running back, just was hammering it. I mean, just not very many. The length of his runs weren't much, but man, he had 28 for 100. His average was 3.5, but man, he could get those first downs every time he tried.
Our linebackers and defensive linemen are feeling those 28 carries today. I promise you,
sure.
When they woke up.
No, I know they are.
I promise you they're feeling them.
Absolutely.
Well, the other thing, too, and Kyle, you may have picked up on this, but what you saw Cincinnati do, the first quarter, we were clearly, and doing a great job, by the way, of keeping Ritter contained and keeping him from going to the edges, right? So we were keeping everything in front of us. We stacked the box, and so that's why we were able to stop their running game, because they weren't getting anything. Where the difference was when they started sliding their tight end out successfully while running Ritter to the same side of the field. So what that did was basically gave him almost like a pitch option. And what he would do is if the end or whoever was spying him bit on him, he would throw it out to the tight end, or vice versa. So the key there to me was that tight end basically opening up that that whole game, because what we started doing was sitting back in coverage after that, and once we started sitting back in coverage, we got picked apart, unfortunately. So go ahead.
I think that's a great point. Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I think that's a great analysis. And, the zone read option for them was kind of shut down early on, but it started to loosen up and start to become effective throughout the game. I mean, as a matter of fact, Cincinnati, I think, had 2 plays where their wide receiver, number 11, dropped the ball, where we were lucky that he dropped the ball. One time down towards the UCF sideline, he had a ton of space to run. And that's a challenging, that zone read, man, that RPO game is a challenging thing to stop if the offense knows how to run it the right way. And Ritter's able to move, obviously. He runs really well, and the running back can obviously do that. And then when you got the option to pop it out there to a tight end who can move in space, or a wide receiver, it's very effective. And there's a reason that it's become such a popular scheme and gadget throughout football overall. It's because it's effective. And there's some things you can do to slow it down. But if you get yourself caught in any type of pass coverage or too high safety look when that RPO is getting run, you're in big trouble. And I think that we got caught a couple of times, and I think that adjustment that you just mentioned was an element to that for sure.
All right, well, back a little bit to the wide receivers and dropping all the balls. It was just weird because that's not a thing that has happened too much in as the season has gone on. Marlon Williams, 8 catches for 97 yards. Jalen Robinson, 5 for 32 yards and a touchdown. Marlon Williams with 2. Trey Nixon, lucky to see him back, 5 for 24. But the long ball was just not there as well because of their coverage. But the receivers definitely did not have their hands working too well.
Except for Jacob Harris.
Yeah,
he actually
caught it. Jacob Harris.
So
better game for Jacob Harris.
Yeah.
Listen, it's like, that's what I'm talking about when you think about like what Dylan is being asked to do. Like, we remember last week versus Temple, we got Jalen a jet sweep, right? And he ran 75 yards down the field. And I said, we got to figure out different ways to get the ball in Jalen Robinson's hands. Well, we didn't really do anything creative to do that. Not that I can remember, at least. And forgive me, because I always do these podcasts without rewatching the game. But, we didn't do things to get him the football in high percentage situations. Our shots down the field, Cincinnati's corners are way too good for us to think that we're just going to be able to throw it deep down the field constantly. And we don't have, we have sometimes these intermediate routes, these dig routes or crossing routes, or even we used to call it a star route, where a slot or a tight end works over towards the Mike linebacker and then whips his way back out into the flat. Like, there's just not a lot of creativity in the play calling sometimes. And specifically in the pass, I mean, really in all of the offense, because our run game looks the same literally every time. But that's where I would get frustrated if I was a fan. I don't know that people should be saying fire Heupel because, frankly, like, who the hell are you going to get to replace him? Number one.
Yeah.
But number two, like, that's where I'd be critical. I'd be like, Coach, we have all these athletes everywhere. We've got to be more creative and find creative ways to get them the ball in space. We tried to do that some with Otis on the outside in the flats, to give him some space as the game went on. But that's the challenge for me, is how do we broaden what our passing game is able to do, even though we throw for all these yards and get all these numbers, et cetera, when that deep ball is shut down, it's like everything matriculates down from there. And the defense starts to close in and the windows start to get smaller and Dylan's job becomes that much harder. And, oh, by the way, they're bringing pressure and he's got to move around in the pocket. So,
I saw pretty much every coach's name pop up in a fire so-and-so yesterday on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. People are blaming Golish because he hasn't gotten the tight ends. The one of the things that I read, it was crazy. Fire Golish because he brought all these tight ends, but they haven't used any of them. It's amazing. I don't know. Speaking of, we forgot really to mention so far the running backs on our team. We were talking about their running backs. Otis Anderson, 12 for 54. Dylan Gabriel, not really a running back, but he had the second highest rushing total, 49 yards. Greg McCrae, 7 rushes for 19, and Bentavious Thompson 5 for 17. The highest average there was Otis Anderson at 4.2. Not very high. He did break one at 22 yards though. So
yeah, I mean, we would have, to beat Cincinnati, I would have thought we probably needed a rush for 180 or 200 something yards, to be honest, at least.
We got 116.
Yeah, so we were short of that. Because you got to be able to keep the ball away from them. You've got to play the scenario of the game. You can't put it all on Dylan constantly because the DBs for Cincinnati are too good. You've got to be able to run the ball. You've got to be able to run it on first and second down and get to third and manageable rather than 3rd and 7+. Now, I will give us our offense credit. I think in the stat that I saw, we were 11 of 15 on third down conversions last night, something around there. So that is a huge positive because we were 4 of 12 the week before on third down. So that was good.
11 of 19.
11 of 19. Still pretty good in my opinion. So, that was positive. But, I would love to see a chart breakout of, what we did on first and second down in the game, whether it was a run or a pass, and how many yards we were able to gain on first and second down. Because I think first and second down just killed us last night, especially in the second and third quarter.
Well, they were runs right up the middle half the time. Just didn't go anywhere at all. In fact, lost some yards sometimes.
Well, to put it in perspective for you, too, I think I did some analysis. I like to look at things between the 40s, right? So we scored 4 out of 5 times after we passed the 40-yard line, and the one time we didn't was because we stalled there on the 20 on that 4-down series that we had. And then every other possession that we had was all that we didn't even get to their 40-yard line, or our 40-yard line, let alone their 40-yard line. So they were 3 and outs. We had several punts, obviously, but I think it was 4 punts this week, and then 6 punts this week. But they never got past the 20-25 yard line. So we were backed up on our own.
Averaged 43.3.
Yeah, we were backed up on our own so frequently. We can't seem to get out of a 3 and out when we're backed up against our own end zone. So that's something where your bigger back is the one that forces those 3 yards per carry or something like that. And we seem to be missing that when we're backed up against our own end zone.
I agree. And I think that, I felt like we were going to lose the game. I'm not kidding you. I felt like we were going to lose the game when we got up 14-3, and then we had 3 series that did absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And I was like, we needed to at least have one of those be a long drive and a punt maybe at the 50 where we put them back inside their own 10, or we just needed to keep possession and kick a field goal, or we needed to take one of those drives and score. But when we had those first couple 3-and-outs after being up 14-3, I'm like, this ain't looking too good, because Cincinnati, all they need is a little piece of momentum. Their back's against the wall right now. Let's hammer them home, and we just weren't able to do that. And I think that was a really frustrating piece to the whole deal.
Yeah, so the points breakdown, we scored 14 in the first, 3 in the second, 8 in the third, and 8 in the fourth.
Yeah.
They scored 3 in the first, 16 in the second, 3 in the third, and 14 in the fourth. So they came on obviously late to do that with those. I mean, one of those was the interception that wound up going for a touchdown for them eventually, and all that. Orbowski with special teams did kick the 36-yarder that was good.
Yep.
But then, this whole kicking the ball on kickoffs out of bounds, started happening
Twice.
again. Yeah, 2 different times. The 6 kickoffs that he had, 3 of them were in bounds, basically. 2 of them, well, something like that. I don't know. It says 3 and 2, but it's 3 and 3, I think. So
I mean, that's a huge deal. I mean, imagine being a linebacker and just like watching the ball fly out of bounds like that. I would just kind of roll my eyes and be like, seriously? Like, we got to give them the ball there. All those things play a factor, all of them. And I think the one thing that I think our fan base maybe gets right is that some of the simple stuff that we should be very, very good at, crossing our T's, dotting our I's, making sure we are really sound in truly fundamental areas of the game. That's where I think that you could say, okay, coach, like we have got to get better quickly and considerably better in some of these really less magnified areas of the game, that when you stack all these elements together and you look from 30,000 feet, you go, man, all that stuff kind of added up, and it might have cost us 6 points. Well, we lost by 3. And I think that's where you could be critical of Coach Heupel if somebody wanted to do that. Obviously, it's the play calling and some of the things that I get frustrated about, but just the overall discipline and the ability to keep our team on the same page is kind of head scratching. But I say that at the second time, like, who in the world do we think Danny White could go get right now, and be that much better right away than who we are today?
Yeah, and I think that also Heupel is going to get rid of the players that were left over from the previous staff here soon. Some of those should be moving on.
Yeah,
not all of them, obviously, because this year with the weirdness with the players didn't basically use a year of eligibility this year. I don't know if that's going to change something with it being his players versus another coach's players or something like that. I have no idea.
Let me ask you this. So I would assume that Marlon goes to the NFL and gets drafted probably mid-round.
Yeah.
Like, do you think – so I keep seeing people, like, players posting, like, this is our last game in the bounce house, like Otis and some other guy. Like, do you think these guys are really going to go next year if they have another year of eligibility? Like, do you think Otis Anderson's gone? Do you think Greg McCrae is coming back or gone? Or,
I think most of them would try their hand at the NFL, and I don't know – I don't know how the NCAA is going to do with that. I guess if you declare yourself for the draft, you're not coming back.
Right.
But I don't see a lot of these players going to the NFL. Marlon Williams is the only clear one that I think. Maybe
so
Richie Grant. Richie Grant, I think, could do well if somebody took a chance on him.
I think it depends on how they grade out too, because last game there were 7 or 8 NFL scouts at the game when we were playing Temple, so they clearly have their eyes on them. I would think that Otis, just the way that he's talked about it, I think he's done. Marlon, I think, is done. Trey Nixon will be an interesting one. I think he may actually come back because he basically lost an entire season with his injury. So I could see him coming back. I think Richie's gone. and everybody else, it's a crapshoot in my opinion. But I think a lot of it's going to depend on the draft grade, and I think that they actually have an opportunity to go through the entire process up until a certain date, kind of like the NBA for the combine. So, and you may
That's
know
awesome.
better than I do, but I feel that I remember reading that they actually have the opportunity to go through that process and then they can come back.
Okay. Yeah. And that brings me to this next point is that, like, you know, yes, this season was disappointing in many ways. Yes, we kind of, if there was a year to break into the Final Four, it feels like this would be the year. Or excuse me, the college football playoff. I don't want to mix that up with college basketball. But there were a lot of reasons why all of a sudden this could have been the year we got in. But I got to be honest, I'm pretty excited about the idea that we have so much talent returning on this team and a pretty unique window of time. So that'd be my other point to everybody saying we should fire Heupel, get rid of the staff, is like, okay, so you're going to bring another staff in. We don't know what they can do. We know we have talented players. I think the only scenario that could work out is if Scott Frost got fired. Like, I would take him back for sure. But there's so much continuity coming back next year that I think we'll be poised to have a big year. And I think if we changed our coaching staff, it would put all of that in question.
Yeah. All right, Coach Israel, you got one more game left in the season. What are you telling your players after this game to get ready for next week?
Well, number one, that this is the team we hate the most. It's a rivalry game. I know that South Florida is down, but, you know, I would have McKenzie address the team. And I'd say, guys, you know, if I was McKenzie, I'd say, guys, you truly don't know when your last play is. And any opportunity you have the chance to get on the field and show out for yourself and for your family and for your university, and especially against South Florida, like, you should be ready to go out and play ball. And you should look for that opportunity and take advantage of it. And, you know, there's not, conference championship contention on the line. There's none of those things. But at the end of the day, I mean, you're a select group of individuals that, have the opportunity to represent this university. And anytime there's an opportunity to do that, you need to be excited about it. And that's what I would say as a coach, but that's what I would also say as a former player. It's like the last time you walk out of that locker room, the last time when you walk across that stage to get that diploma, your identity is going to change. You're no longer Kyle Israel, the quarterback. You're whatever the next phase of your life is. And you can't take those things for granted because they're just hard to get back. And that's why I would have this team get excited about playing South Florida.
Awesome. Well, that would work for me. All right, man. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you after next week's game as well. And hopefully, I think we'll have a better outcome. But I just want to say we only lost by 3 points to the number 7 team in the nation. There's good things that came out of that. So I think everybody needs to remember that when they're down. And, you know, I think we're all upset today. Last night I thought about this really hard. And we played a much better game than a lot of people were expecting us to, and we scored quite a bit more points than they have allowed all year long. So I think there's things to be proud of and things to look forward to.
And now you got to cheer for Cincinnati. I mean, I hope Cincinnati's able to go and win a conference championship and make a run and somehow find their way off in the playoff, because they would have never been taken seriously, number one, without beating us, but number two, without what we've laid the groundwork for the last couple of seasons. And so we can still find joy in this college football season through another team in our conference. And I'm going to do just that to make myself feel a little bit better about it.
Absolutely. All right, man. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you very much.
All right, guys. Have a good night.
All right, Roger. So we're rooting for Cincinnati to win it all.
I'm not.
You're not. You're not rooting for Cincinnati?
No. There's a family rivalry. As you know, my family's from Cincinnati, and my cousin works for UC. So right now they've evened the series, and I've lost one more talking point.
Oh, okay. I understand. Who are you rooting for then?
I'm rooting for us to
Tulsa.
I would like to see Tulsa work their way out of that. I mean, they're clearly not leaving the conference, so let's get as many teams as we can that are going to be highly ranked and see where we can take this thing. But I think Cincinnati has the best chance, realistically speaking, for the playoff. And if they can get in the playoff, that means more money for us, so I'm good with that.
Okay. Is there anything positive in this by the numbers segment that you have this week?
Positive? Yes. I mean, obviously,
why don't we find something positive in there to talk about? We need to change the direction of this show today.
Okay.
Let's go positive.
Well, we can tack on another game to our 30-plus point total in the last 47 games, so that's a positive. Let's see here. Let's see.
Man, I was trying to change the tone.
Well, I mean, we're still we're actually tied for first with UF now for most passing yards. 396.9 for us, or I'm sorry, 377.6, and actually UF has exactly the same. So we're still averaging more than we were last year.
We still have Ben Stout coming up, by the way, talking basketball.
That's positive.
I just wanted something positive. There's got to be something in here.
Well, I mean, it's just that a lot of these numbers are looking at our averages, and unfortunately they went down. Just because we have been clipping along, especially offensively, at such a high level. How
about this? Greg McCrae, 4th all-time with 27 career rushing touchdowns.
Well, there you go.
That was positive.
That was definitely positive. I will say this, something that is more positive than people thought. If you take the drops out, Dylan Gabriel hit 65%, and he was actually rated in the 70s. I can't remember what exactly the 70s for his passing efficiency rating in several of the ratings. So from a passing perspective, actually Dylan performed fairly well. He also scored in the 70s for passing when he's blitzed. So he's doing better at that. Unfortunately, when he was rushed, which means he was actually the blitz got there, he was back in his norm in the mid-50s. But before, when he was blitzed, that number would go down as well as when he was under the pressure. So he's doing a little bit better on that. What you saw him do as well was he was throwing some balls away, which you haven't seen him do before. So he's playing smarter with the ball. I think he threw three balls away when the pocket was collapsing. So that was a little bit better. Yeah,
it's so hard to find positive things.
What you guys don't see is I have a page and a half of like numbers here,
and I wanted you to find the positive ones. And that's all I wanted.
And
we're just.
I don't know what to do, man. I mean, Dylan Gabriel's PFF rating was 72.6, which is higher than it was last week. So there you go.
Okay. How about Rogers' 5-alarm hot take of the week?
Oh, boy. Okay. So this one is not necessarily saying I'm on board this train, but it's something that that's coming up that I think is important for us to talk about. So has the program lost the it factor? In other words, it's will to win. It seemed like the 2017 teams, the 2018 teams, when KZ was behind center, that team, the Shaquem Griffins of the world, those guys would not lose. And when they were on the sideline and they were behind, because they were behind in a lot of those games, they would not lose. You saw the same thing with some of the teams, some of Blake Bortles' teams in the 2013 season, right? So have we lost that it factor and will to win? And let's add on to that, has Dylan Gabriel developed enough as a leader to be that person today? Now, I'm not saying can he be, but is he now? And then Coach Josh Heupel, is he the right guy to instill that in the team? So
ignite it is what you said.
Yes.
Has to find a way to ignite the it factor. The it factor, yeah, I mean, it's a big deal. It's a thing. It's for sure a thing. I don't see that. I mean, I would say that none of these players give up, though. You know
I'm
what
not
I'm
saying
saying?
there's a difference between...
I know, but I'm just saying that I don't see that. So I'm saying that I know that there's a difference. I don't know, though. It's a good question if they have the it factor. I think some of them do. I just think sometimes, I don't know. It's a good. I don't know if that's such a hot take. It is in a way if you say it that they have lost their it and the will to win. I don't think that they have.
I don't see them imposing that will on anybody. When I saw KZ come off the sideline and we were in a crunch time, I knew that he was going to make that play. He was going to do that little extra to win, right?
Well, that's just because, I mean, KZ is an exceptional player.
But it's not even that. The team and the attitude. When you saw him on the sideline, how he was when you saw them rally around him, when you saw that energy, right? That positivity, that energy. I see that. I saw that with Blake Bortles. I mean, Blake Bortles, when he went into the huddle, we're going to make this pass, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. You heard stories from former players. There's that mentality that it's going to happen.
Well, it surely was not his freshman season that happened with KZ.
Oh, absolutely not. And that's why I said, is he there? If we're talking about DG and comparing the two, because inevitably there's going to be a comparison, it's not can he get there? It's has he gotten there? Is he that leader now? Because he wasn't last year for sure. And then can Coach Josh Heupel instill that in the team?
I don't know about either one of those questions. Those are very good questions or statements. I don't know if that was totally a hot take, by the way. They're good questions. So I'm going to think about those for a while. And maybe we can debate that a little bit more later. We're going to have a lot of things football to talk about.
Yeah, because the off season's coming quickly. Yeah. Unless
this is weird. Yeah, this is weird. I don't know about this. Go ahead.
Yeah. So something that came out that Mark Daniels from UCF was blogging about was there is a potential. There's a lot of conversation going around extending the season into the spring of 2021, and for teams that have not played their full regimen of games, so the full 12-game season, which most teams have not, continuing to play and scheduling games for the spring of 2021. And that's full games with fans in the stands, not spring games, like actual games. UCF is said to be considering this as a way to offset revenue. And then you've got, and I could see this too with the Pac-12, right? Because the Pac-12 has gotten such a late start. Those TV partners, I am sure, because those
and there would be some FCS teams that would probably want to get on board because they're supposed to be playing their season supposedly in the spring, possibly.
Spring, yep.
There may be, I don't know if my concern with that is what about the players that are injured now or nursing some injuries from the season that they've just almost completed? And then when do those games count? Do they count for next year? Do they count on this year?
I would imagine they would be for
it's one other asterisk that we would add for. But then the playoff had already happened. The bowl games have already happened. Yep. It's just weird.
Yeah, the only thing that and the other thing too is to your point, those players that are going to the combine. So what
those players will be gone.
Yeah.
So it would be a weird spring football season that wouldn't really count, I guess.
Yes.
It would be a way for the schools to get some revenue. You're right. If we were able to have more fans in the stands at that point. But they would have to, I think they would really have to be some special games. And then I think that
it's almost like what the bowl games were originally intended to be, right? Originally, bowl games were intended not to be the predictor for the championship. They were set up to be, conferences played each other and didn't really play against each other at all outside of the game. So the bowl games were set up as, hey, let's get these exhibition games against the top teams in various conferences to see what would happen if they actually got to play. And so, I could see that be almost like an extended bowl season. But the question is, some folks, like we're going to have, assuming we play at South Florida, we're going to have, we're only going to be missing 2 games this season. Whereas some teams, due to COVID and other things, they've missed 4 or 5 games. So Are we going to allow them? To me, it just sounds like exhibition games because Florida hasn't played their full complement either.
Yeah.
They have 2 as well. That'd be an interesting matchup.
Yeah. I don't know. All right. Well, it's interesting. It's something to think about, and we'll have to follow that and see what happens. All right. What do you say we talk to Ben Stout? Basketball season is just around the corner, and it starts on next Saturday.
I'll be there.
That's very exciting. All right. We're going to take a break, and then we'll be back with Ben Stout. Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley reminding you to tune in every Tuesday night, 9 to 10 p.m. on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, plus the WDBO app for Knightline at Night. Brought to you by Chad Bar Law. We'll be taking your calls and your texts reacting to the previous week's UCF sports action, and you never know who will show up. Once again, that's Knightline at Night, every Tuesday, 9 to 10 p.m. on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, plus the WDBO app. Go Knights and charge on.
Welcome. This is a promo for the Take a Left at Albuquerque podcast, new to the Knightline Sports Network. You should listen to it. I say things like this. We need to stop blaming Jerry because we would do the exact same thing if we owned the Dallas freaking Cowboys. Do you know how much fun it is to own the Dallas Cowboys? My guests will say things sometimes like this.
It's the Lord of the Flies thing that happens when they don't understand that things are wrong, spoiler alert, until Piggy dies.
Lord of the Flies has been out for like 100 years. I don't even know.
Sorry to everyone at home who I spoiled the book for. A book's been out for like 90 years or something.
And sometimes, rarely though, I'll say really stupid things like this. If they don't make it out of the West and the Raptors get to the finals, I will go on either this show or whoever's show and say that Kawhi Leonard is overrated because I have too much evidence of it. New episodes drop every Friday with me and some of my good friends right here on the Knightline Sports Network.
I'm Jeff Allen. Join me each and every week on the Knightline Sports Network for the AAC Report. We bring you in-depth coverage of each school in football, basketball, baseball, softball, soccer, golf, tennis, and more, as well as bring you insider interviews and focus in on the biggest games and news of the week. That's all right here each week on the AAC Report, only on the Knightline Sports Network.
Looking for more out of your Porsche? Look no further than Flat6Motorsports.com. They have the widest selection of aftermarket Porsche parts anywhere in the world. With over 85 product lines and in-depth expertise, Flat6Motorsports.com is your one-stop shop for any Porsche performance needs. Whether you're shopping for intakes, exhausts, suspension, or tuning, they have you covered. Flat6Motorsports.com is the premier Porsche aftermarket specialist. Check them out at Flat6Motorsports.com. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Knightline's own 7-footer, Ben Big Social Stout, and Inside the Paint. All right, everybody, please welcome back Big Ben Stout. Ben, basketball's about to start, and it looks like that UCF has quite the schedule coming out of the gate, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I tweeted yesterday or the day before when the schedule was officially announced as far as our complete schedule, is that our schedule is going to be tough this year with 20 conference games, and it's starting right away. Not much of a warm up, but until we get to those conference games. But certainly it is a front-loaded schedule. Our out-of-conference features 4 teams that are traditionally very good basketball powers, certainly in Auburn and Michigan that are going to start out the season. Both of those teams were in the top 25 last year, and Florida State as well. So we've got some tough matchups. I think it's front loaded. I think the out of conference schedule with Oklahoma, Auburn, at Michigan, at Florida State, I think it does say a little bit about Johnny Dawkins' confidence and the talent that he has on our team. Teams like Auburn have lost a few pieces, but certainly I think it shows some confidence that Dawkins has, that he wants to get this team ready to go for this 20-game conference slate right away with some traditionally good, very good basketball teams. So I'm looking forward to us starting the season. Of course, it's certainly a delayed. I can't believe we're talking about a season preview right now in the 22nd of November, but I'm excited about us getting started, and we should be a pretty good team this year.
Hey, Ben, I'm excited for the season. Obviously, we've got some pretty good out-of-conference games. I'm hoping that we can keep that Auburn game. Obviously, there was some late-breaking news today saying that they actually are going to do a self-imposed postseason ban. Bruce Pearl at it again. But at the end of the day, speaking about our squad, a real big piece of that we lose this year. We weren't necessarily expecting to, which is Colin Smith. And he is someone that we ran our offense through consistently. So I'd love it if you could just take us through and give us your thoughts on how we're going to replace him in our offensive scheme, since we won't be able to run our game through him anymore.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it was tough news to hear about what's going on with Colin and him opting out for this year. And it sounded like, and actually Dawkins did confirm in an interview later after Colin's announcement that it was non-COVID related. And so there was it was a pretty detailed post when he made the announcement, but certainly it made it, he didn't give too many details about exactly what's going on with him, but he did allude that it is some sort of medical condition. And so really our thoughts and prayers are with Colin on whatever he's going through, that he recovers well. And he's going to be very tough to replace this season for UCF. He is a very skilled big man that can provide a lot of great scoring threat on the inside, and he had a great shot on the outside. And as you said, Roger, I mean, we ran our offense through him last year. That being said, I think that this team and the makeup of this team, while we lost some good size and some skilled big man with Colin Smith, I think looking forward to this season, I think Dawkins is going to be able to, he's not going to necessarily replace Colin Smith and the production that he had, the type of player that he is, but he's going to be able to make adjustments because this team is pretty versatile. If we can stay healthy, I mean, with players like, hopefully CJ Walker can actually get eligible. That would be a huge win for us and add some just huge dynamics to our entire team, offensively and defensively. But we've got some guys that are eligible this year in Sean Mobley, who had to sit out last year. He was a transfer from BCU. We've got a really athletic guard coming in from Louisville, who's a grad transfer in Darius Perry. And then I think the leader of this team, and he said it in a few postseason interviews and over the summer, and I really am looking forward to what Darren Green Jr. is going to bring to the table. So I think this team gets a little bit more athletic and a little bit more spread out, maybe more guard oriented, with guys like, Sean Mobley is a 3-level player. He can definitely mix it up on the inside, but he can spread it out and play outside as well. Avery Diggs is saying that he's working on his jump shot. I think that's where we're going to get a lot of our rebounding from, is guys like Avery and potentially Moses Bowl coming in there off the bench. Hopefully he's developed as a player. I think we're going to have to get some of the rebounding and defense that Colin provided a little bit by committee. But certainly this team has a lot of athleticism, and they're going to be a good defensive team, and certainly a lot of scoring coming through Darren Green Jr., potentially CJ Walker if he's available. I like Sean Mobley's game, and I think he brings some good things to the table. So we're going to have to replace him by committee. It's a big blow to us, but I think we can do it with a little bit of adjustments from Dawkins' game plan.
Already 3 seniors on this team, Brandon Mahan, Avery Diggs, and Darius Perry. Who's the leader on this team, do you think?
I think that Darius Perry is going to bring in a lot of that leadership. I don't know if it's necessarily going to come from Brandon and Avery. Brandon certainly started a lot of his games that he came in here. I think Darius is going to bring a lot of leadership, but honestly, I see the leader of this team being Darren Green Jr. I think he's ready in his sophomore season to step up as our leading scorer returning. And I think he's going to play an even bigger role this year. And I think he's ready to lead. You can hear it in his voice and the words and how he's talking about this team in any type of press availability that he's had, which has been limited, but there has been a few. I think he's ready to step in and be the leader of this team. And quite frankly, I think somebody like Darius coming in as a grad transfer from a top 15, top 20 program in Louisville last year, I think he's going to help him along with that journey of really stepping into that role. I don't see them clashing at all. I see them working really well together because they're very different players. Darius is more of a defensive-minded kind of distributor of the ball. He can certainly shoot the three, but he's certainly a pass-first point guard. And then we've got Darren coming off screens and trying to create and trying to make his own, or trying to make sure he can get that shot up that he's so well known for. I think Darren Green Jr. is ready to step into the leadership role of this team.
All right, so we talked a lot about the guards there, so I'm going to hit you with another guard question. Obviously, with Darius Perry coming in, and we've got Green, who's established, we've got Tony Johnson Jr. out there, and Tony Johnson Jr. has been a highly talked about recruit that came in and player for us. He's a sophomore this year. How does that work with his dynamic and his development between him and Darius Perry? And what do you see from him this year?
Yeah, so Tony Johnson Jr., I'm excited to see how he's developed this year because he did kind of come along a little bit slowly last year. And he even talked about it, how Dawkins, really challenged him as a freshman to come in and make an impact. But in practice or whatever it may be, Dawkins wasn't quite seeing the fire that he needed to see in the effort and, quite frankly, the production that he needed to see the court on a consistent basis. That being said, towards the end of the year, he certainly kind of stepped into a bigger role. He did appear in 20 games overall. He started a few of them, but I think everybody remembers that awesome game he had at Cincinnati where we were able to beat them last year, and he just kind of exploded for his career high in points, and he even contributed in rebounds and assists. I mean, he was just had a great all-around game, but a little bit of inconsistency in his freshman season. I am looking for him to step up and step into a much bigger role. I see him averaging about 15, 20 minutes a game, much more than last year at about 10 minutes a game. Now, that being said, it could be even more than that. I believe in Tony. I think he's going to continue to improve. He's more athletic, and he's just got kind of a different game than what Darius is going to bring to the table. I maybe adjust that a little bit. Darius is pretty athletic, but that being said, Tony Johnson is very quick with the basketball. He can find people in space or in tight windows pretty easily. And I think he's going to, in year two, take a big step forward. I don't know if he's necessarily going to start over Darius, certainly not to start the season, in my opinion. But you could start to see that towards the end of the year. I think he's going to give some big minutes to start out, and I'm looking forward to seeing that progression.
All right, Johnny Dawkins in his 5th year as the coach for the Knights. He's had winning seasons every year. But we hardly know anything about our basketball team when we're going into the season. You just never know. You never know what's going to happen. Do you think he continues the winning ways? I mean, last year it was really close, 16-14 last year. The year before, 24-9. The year before that, 19-13, and then his first year, 24-12. And that had the extra games for the NIT that we basically finished third, fourth in.
Right. Yeah.
What do you think? Does he continue the winning ways this year with this team? There's a lot of unknown.
It's even worse this year, right? Because there's hardly anything that has been put out. I mean, I don't think they even put out a media guide on the basketball team. I mean, there's not much information out there just because as of now, we would have been playing a lot of basketball by now in late November. And so we would really know what this team is about now. I mean, the schedule just got announced the other day, the complete schedule. It's a strange year in general, as we've talked about a million times. But it's even a different year from a conference scheduling standpoint where we played 20 conference games. So, and the American Athletic Conference is no joke. I do think, though, obviously I'm a homer here, and I believe in Dawkins and what he has to do, what he can do as a coach, and what he gets his teams to do. I do think that we have enough talent to certainly make some noise this year in the American, especially if CJ Walker becomes eligible. I think a lot rides on that. But that being said, you got a very experienced senior in Brandon Mahan that can step in easily and play the three. So you don't lose much there if CJ is or as far as you don't lose a lot of experience with this team. Brandon stepping in that starting role if CJ is not available. But I do see, that would be a huge boost to our team when you got somebody that you can put into that starting lineup right away that is dynamic and as athletic as CJ Walker. It would be a huge boost to our team, and I really hope that he's able to get eligible this year. All in all, long-winded answer to your question, I do believe in what Dawkins can bring to the table, and I think that he's excited about the versatility of this team. We don't have a huge amount of size. Obviously, we've got Avery Diggs and Moses Bowl, but I think we're going to make up for that with a lot of versatility and players that can play multiple positions and really mix it up. So, this team is going to be ready to defend. They're going to put forth a lot of effort, and hopefully we can run our offense through great shooters like Darren Green, and we'll see what else happens throughout the season with our other players. Hopefully CJ's available, but I believe Sean Mobley is going to step into a big role now that he's eligible. So I'm excited to see him as well. I think he's a great team guy, and one that Dawkins is really excited to finally get in there in a 19 uniform on the court.
It's interesting that you mentioned versatility, because when you look through the roster, there's a lot of those guys that are listed as guards that could be point forwards. Dre Fuller is another one. So you could almost play with a 4-guard small ball setup, or you can play a different type of offense altogether. What's really interesting to me is Dawkins, and I'd like to get your take on this. Dawkins likes to prefers to play a fast-paced offense. He prefers to press quite a bit, and he's not had the ability to do that with the makeup of the roster that he's had thus far. With that changing, do we see more of a shift to that up-tempo style with a press style? I know we saw a little more press last year, but do you really think he goes for the gusto this year with that?
Yeah, I hope so, Roger, because I do agree with you. It seems like some of the personnel, especially with the personnel that we had in 2018, I mean, when you've got the size that we had in 2018, it just seemed like it was a little bit more apt to set up in the half court of our defensive scheme when you've got an anchor like Taco Fall in the middle. You did see some increase in that last year, but again, I know Colin liked to step outside, but he really was more of a pure big man, and kind of an anchor in the post. At least I believed he was, and so I agree with you that that this year, with the type of player that we have, especially at the big positions, I'm hoping that we can see a lot more kind of small ball lineups which is kind of like against my nature, considering I'm a big man myself, and I want to see some great big men on the court. But I look more and more at the roster that we have available to play for us, and it just seems like we can take advantage of some speed and athleticism by playing maybe even a 4-guard lineup, and you put guys like Mobley or CJ if he's available right there in that 5 spot, and really just run guys like Dre Fuller, as you mentioned, or even Isaiah Adams at the 3 or 4. We could see some great athleticism on the court if you could see those lineups, and then definitely increasing our pickup in the full court with the press. I honestly think that could be a great availability for us. So I'm hoping to see an increase in that this year.
All right. Well, lots of questions, and we will find out coming up very soon. I believe it's Saturday that this whole thing starts, correct?
Yeah, that's right. We strap it up against Oklahoma on Saturday, and that should be a great game at 2 p.m. And it's at home, which is great because I know you mentioned that you were going to be there, Roger. That's going to be a great game to watch. I mean, we certainly took it to them last year and lost a heartbreaker by 1 point. It was our last game of the non-conference last year, so we just kind of started off with a sour taste in our mouth there, starting the conference play last year. So I'm looking forward to seeing what this team is all about, and hopefully we can see a great win on Saturday and get the season off started right.
And then again right on Monday, so that's right,
a quick
get going
turnaround
very, very quickly. All righty, man. Thank you. I appreciate it, and we look forward to talking to you after some of this stuff gets going a little bit more as well, obviously.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm looking forward to this season, and we'll catch up real soon.
All right, great to talk to Ben Stout again, as always. You can hear him also with us on Knightline at Night on WDBO Tuesday nights at 9. It's the three of us, Roger, myself, and Ben. So hopefully you tune into that. This has been a long show. This is probably one of the longer ones that we've ever had. We're going on 2 hours and 26 minutes at this point.
And that's my fault.
It's not your fault. We just had a lot to talk about. There was a lot to get out, and we had a lot more, but I don't know if anybody's listening at this point.
Yeah, I don't think they want to hear it.
You never know. So, yeah, we don't want to go too much longer with this. So, final thoughts, I think, about this.
Final thoughts are this. I think we played a heck of a game. I think we have a good enough team that could have won this game. I think we called a good enough game to have won this game. We just made mistakes, and we had to play perfect because we were playing a really, really good team that was really well coached. So this is not a reason to jump off of the building. Another positive that came out of this is we've been playing some really inexperienced guys that have been getting some experience because they've been sitting behind people. So this will pay off dividends in the long term. So, wish we could have won it. It was a 36-33 game. We were in it the entire way. Hats off to the guys. Hats off to the outgoing seniors. For a lot of them, this will be their last game.
Absolutely. I've totally, it took me totally off guard that this was senior night.
Yeah.
When we were at the stadium. It was my first game being there this year in person. And, when the intros were happening, I was like, what's this? They're all lining up. Oh, my God, it's senior night. So that was crazy. Kind of a little weird senior night as well, because the parents weren't allowed to come out and the families weren't allowed to come out with them. So that was kind of weird. By the way, thank you to Chet for hooking me up with the Tower Club seats. They were really cool.
Yeah, I'm jelly, Chet. I'm just going to put that out there. I'm totally jelly.
Well, I've never sat there before, and I was that guy because it's a little bit more subdued in that section, and I was that guy, and my wife was that girl that were screaming the entire time. You can probably hear it in my voice even today still. because I was screaming more at the referees probably than anything else. But man, very cool experience with the food and the whole thing. Very, very comfortable seats up there. If you've never sat up there, they have pads on them, and they're just nice. It's a great, great view from way up there.
Yeah,
so.
I've actually sat there a few times, but you're right. It's a
You've
totally
sat there,
different...
so you're really not that jealous.
No, I know what it's like. That's why I'm jealous.
Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. No, it was cool though, and thank you to him for hooking me up with those seats. We really enjoyed it, and we appreciate. He's contributed a couple times, and very, very cool of him to do that. All right, well, I think that this is going to be about it because this has been a very, very long show. We appreciate if you're still listening. You are the champions if you're still listening. All right, this has been Knightline 243. I'm Andrew Phegley.
And I'm Roger Phipps. Go Knights!
Charge on.
UCF, charge on to the field with